Hi, давай, 3, 2, 1. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. For some ungodly reason, you still watch these kinds of things. Ryan has done the tremendously dangerous deed of coming to the sofa. Over the last several years, Ryan has been trolling you all in the Freedom Alternative groups on news about third worldism, especially third worldism as it pertains to let's put it this way, positioning towards the geopolitics of the Middle East. Would that be fair?
That's a blunt sort of, what's the word? Yeah, I could put it that way.
Yeah, it's in the widest sense possible.
Yeah,
Let's put it this way. I don't want to call him an Israel shill, although
people have accused me of being a spy for Mossad. So
right, because these days knowing a bit more than the first 5 lines of the Wikipedia page gets you accused of being a spy. So, it's not really difficult to be accused of being a spy. But the reason we gathered here is to gossip about Ireland, because Ireland has been an odd one out on the political map of Europe for quite some time now, and it's getting increasingly extreme to the point that one of the most left-wing writers here in Romania, who would accuse everyone of being a fascist whenever you would use the word leftist about someone, he put it in his own headline, "Far leftist gets elected in Ireland." So at some point it becomes too much of an odd one out. And I want to know more, and I'm sure a portion of our audience wants to know more, because, Irish politics is not something that is usually discussed because, to put it bluntly, it's a marginal country at the margins of Europe, not in NATO, not in the Schengen area, in the EU, but not really, because even inside the EU it has a lot of problems because of its status as a de facto tax haven for American companies. Not particularly involved in EU politics, generally speaking, and for quite some time nowadays not particularly involved in British politics either. So for most of our lifetimes, let's put it this way, Ireland was in the country ball meme. It was just the country ball that blinked outside of the common
just
cliques.
on the outside of just past England, the UK.
Yeah, pretty much. So now suddenly, neutral and blinking Ireland from the backside suddenly has opinions, and holy shit.
Yes. Yeah.
So how did that happen? How did Ireland become a place that festers so much third worldism and so much without, and when I say the word extremist, I don't even necessarily make a value judgment, but it's just outside of the mainstream of Europe. So, how did the Ireland become suddenly, or at least seemingly suddenly, a third worldist hub of extremism?
More or less, it comes down to its history with Britain, because it was Britain's first colony. Effectively, the colonization of Ireland began in the 12th century, but was kind of completed in the 7th century, or 17th century, I should say, when it finally did become full-on it was actually officially part of the UK at the time. You had things like the plantation of Ulster, which was essentially British settlers being sent in there. You had the potato famine, obviously, which did affect all of Europe, but Ireland got particularly screwed over because of the policies the UK had. Fast forward to 1920 or the 1920s, past World War I, sorry, and Ireland has a war of independence and mostly succeeds, apart from Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland was the part the plantation of Ulster happened. That part remained part of the UK, and it still does to this day. Fast forward, we're going to say past that, Ireland was pretty neutral throughout most of it. During World War II, Ireland didn't let British planes or British ships dock on their ports. There was the famous, the President Émon de Valera, when Hitler killed himself. He sent a letter of condolence to Thingamabobber, to was it the ambassador to Nazi Germany? I believe it was the ambassador. Yeah. What else is there? And Ireland has mostly been neutral. There has been some flare-ups and things. Mainly in Northern Ireland with the Troubles. That was the descendants of the Protestant settlers, and the Irish Catholics were living there. The Irish Catholics wanted to rejoin, went to Northern Ireland to rejoin Ireland. The Protestants wanted to remain part of the United Kingdom. That happens for 30 years until 1998, when we had the Good Friday Agreement, which is a little bit funny, where Northern Ireland does remain part of the United Kingdom, but if there is a referendum where where the people decide we would rejoin Ireland, that's what will happen, and people have the right to decide what happens then. I'm going to say mainly with Irish Thirdworldism is it's mainly manifested with Israel. That's how it's traditionally manifested, mainly, on their opinion, especially after the Six-Day War.
What made the political elite in Ireland change its mind? Because there was a time when the political elite in Ireland was, if not in full consensus with the rest of us when it comes to Israel, at the very least not openly hostile.
Yeah.
Right. So you say that the Six-Day War was the turning point?
Ish, because I mean, the IRA back in the day and some of the Irish elite were supportive of Israel because the Zionist militias, especially the Irgun in Lehi, they were very anti-British. Their operations were against Britain. And I think even Yitzhak Shamir, the former Prime Minister of Israel, and he's actually my profile picture in some of the chat, on the Freedom Alternative chats, his pen name was Michael, after Michael Collins, the thing. But Ireland was one of the last countries in Europe to establish full diplomatic relations with Ireland 2 years before the Six-Day War. The Six-Day War was kind of a turning point, but things got really bad after the Lebanon War, after the Lebanese Civil War, and then it sort of snowballed all the way down from there, you know.
The Lebanese Civil War was ultimately Christians being oppressed by Muslims, when you get down to the brass tacks of it. So how does a Christian country goes from the Lebanese Civil War, which is if you're a Christian, I'm not, but if you're a Christian, it's self-evident who you should support in the Lebanese
theory.
Civil War. How do you get from there to Hamas über alles?
Yeah, that's right. I think the seeds there were in the Six-Day War because they would perceive when Israel took the Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank, Judea and Samaria from Jordan, some parts of Ireland considered that similar to Britain taking Ireland, literally, like in the same way, occupying Ireland. They considered that very similar thing, and that's sort of when it started moving downhill. But it started accelerating from 1982 all the way to the present day. I mean, you mentioned earlier with the current president, literally came out and said that Hamas are. She didn't call them a terrorist organization. She said they are part of the fabric of the of Palestinian society, and she said, "Oh, it didn't start October 7th," which is pretty much a really sneaky dog whistle.
It's not sneaky at all.
It's not. Yeah, well, to like layman, to a layman, but it's a dog whistle basically saying Israel shouldn't exist. That's literally what it.
Yeah, because I remember in the 80s and even especially in the 90s, we would say sometimes that Ireland is the most Eastern European country of the West. But nowadays that would be an insult to Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
But in fairness, in many ways, especially seeing the recent riots, it still is the most Eastern European country in the West.
As well.
Yeah, but it's Eastern Europe of 1991. That is the lowest point of Eastern Europe, rather than Eastern Europe of today or of the 1930s. Because it's the same thing here, right? You have the history of the famine because of the policies of the Soviet Union plus the weather. We've been colonized by 3 or 4 empires in the last several hundreds of years. Worse than Ireland. I mean, Ireland had only one enemy. Eastern Europe had 4 usually, or 3, right? The Germans, the Russians, and the Ottomans in particular. But we did not end up with a third worldist elite, whereas Ireland did.
And it's not just the elite as well. They're actually
nowadays it's the population as well. Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't say the entire population. Like I'm because I'm of Irish descent. My family are all from Ireland, but my family are generally quite pro-Israel. In my Substack article, I write for Substack.
Yeah, I'll link your Substack as well.
There we go. In my how and why I became pro-Israel article, I mentioned my nan generally was in support of Israel, and she would say, well, they're fighting terrorism and they are experiencing terrorism just like we had during the Troubles. And she told me the story of I think it was my nan who told me this one. I'm trying to think. But it was having to have a supermarket evacuated because the IRA claimed they put a bomb there. and having the bomb squad called. And so I think there is that relation there.
Yeah, this still does happen in Israel.
Yeah, a little less, but they're still, not as bad as the Second Intifada. Which
Yes.
that was,
But I was there at some point in early 2000s when we were evacuated from a railway station because there's a bomb threat. In the end, it turned out to be false alarm, but oftentimes it wasn't, right? So there's that. And that's why it is particularly surprising. That's why I wanted to have you here to explain to me how do you get from that situation into supporting Hamas, because it just doesn't make that much sense.
So, because there is a very interesting thing with the populace of Ireland, because there are two different, the ones who are pro-Palestinian have two different camps, and I think the second camp we're going to mention is kind of bigger. The first camp is, well, Israel, is just like Britain, and they're colonizing Palestinian territory in the West Bank and Gaza and whatnot. But there's another camp which compares the Israelis themselves, the Jews, to the Ulster settlers. They are these foreign settlers who've come to this land, they've kicked the indigenous people off, and Israel's built on stolen land, it needs to be dismantled and all this.
Right, so the Jews are the settlers of Judea, which has been called Judea for 25,
they consider them
30
just bog standard
centuries.
Europeans, and they consider the Palestinians these unique Aboriginal people, even though,
Even though that's not exactly the case. But okay,
yeah,
fair enough. Okay, what gets one into this kind of thinking?
What gets one? There is a whole thing, there's a little bit of a meme when it comes to the Irish, and it's the whole, we were colonized once, we were a colonized people, so therefore we're going to stand with other colonized people and fight against what we perceive as imperialism. That's sort of the mindset. It's, that's how they would perceive, for example, the PLO. I mean, the IRA were very friendly with the PLO and the ANC when South Africa was going on. If you go to Derry, which is actually a town in Northern Ireland, you'll see murals everywhere, and there'll be like like an IRA fighter and a Palestinian fighter with the keffiyeh with their fists raised up.
Because they were both schooled by Russia, so of course.
Yeah, but the IRA were mainly supplied by Irish Americans, actually.
Yes, but the funding and a lot of ideological training was either by proxy or directly from Moscow.
Mainly by proxy, I would imagine them,
But by Moscow. Same with ANC, it was more directly, yes.
Yeah.
That's true. And with the PLO, I mean, Yasser Arafat had his military studies here.
Yeah, literally in...
Well, not in this county, it was closer to Bucharest, but in Romania, yes.
Yeah.
So it's not a new thing. Nowadays, I would say, and please do contradict me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. Nowadays, there's a lot of self-evident Russian propaganda within the quote-unquote pro-Philistine arguments, and not just in Ireland, but also in the American universities and other hubs of anti-Semitism, effectively. And, it's like meet the new boss, same as the old boss, because a lot of it is a KGB playbook.
I was going to say, clarify, in which way? Would you say the way they would say, well, Hamas had to do this because they were constantly being oppressed by Israel?
No. That one I think is a unique Westoid interpretation. But fundamentally, the PLO had its propaganda cooked in Moscow. So when the Westerners are copying the PLO messaging, they're either intentionally or inadvertently, but nevertheless, they are copying a Russian playbook.
Yeah. Zionism is racism. Zionism is supremacy. I mean, you'll hear it a lot that Israel is a Jewish supremacist state. It's an apartheid state. And they're referencing Israel proper as well. There's that whole meme where it's these, there's over 60 laws which discriminate against Palestinians. And one of those laws is the fact that they use the Hebrew calendar and not the Islamic one. They shit you not.
Well, actually, the Jewish banks are using the European calendar, but even in Saudi Arabia, they're using the European calendar.
Yes, they're all apartheid. Another one is there's a law on the books where if a child below the age of 12 commits a crime, their parents get fined. That's not only apartheid, because it apparently disproportionately affects Arabs and Palestinians and whatnot. But it's also quote-unquote collective punishment, even though every other country on earth has that. For the most part.
For the most part, yeah. Although in Europe it's usually under the age of 10 or 9. It's actually even more extreme than the Israeli version. But sure, not all countries have it. In some places it has been abolished or has been extended. Like in the US nowadays, the parents can be held liable for certain crimes of their children, even if the child is like 20. right?
Okay,
So
20. That's good.
yeah, because I think it's Massachusetts. I don't remember which U.S. state actually prosecuted the parents of a mass shooter, and the mass shooter was like 19 or something. And the court interpreted this as is under the age of majority, was still living with their parents. Therefore, there is some liability for the parents as well. So it's not exactly an Israeli thing.
Yeah.
It's relatively common, although not every country has it. Most do.
You just remind me, there's another thing as well where I've had arguments with pro-Palestinians who say, oh, Israel has prisons exclusively for children. And I sat there and I thought, that
We all
sounds like
do.
a juvenile detention.
Yeah, we all do.
We all do,
yeah. They're called juvenile detention centers. Now, of course, it would be a more interesting argument if those particular prisons or juvenile detention centers are particularly harsh compared to the global standards. Now, that would be a fair argument, but I don't think they are.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a juvenile detention center in Israel, but I have seen the inside of a normal prison. They don't look particularly different than the European standard. So they're not particularly harsher than the European standards. So, and definitely by global standards, they're relatively humane to the extent that a prison can be humane. So, have you tried not committing crimes? That tends to help.
Or throwing stones, or getting involved in terrorism. That tends.
It tends to help.
Yeah,
generally speaking.
I'm not an expert on this issue, but maybe
we can have a conversation with some of the Arab members of the Israeli Supreme Court, and they may have a similar opinion.
Yes, the Arab Supreme Justices who sentence a former Prime Minister.
Yes. Pretty much. So that's the thing. I mean, apartheid South Africa, I don't think had
black judges
or even colored judges.
No.
So and again, even if it were an apartheid state, let's put it this way. So what? Because my main concern is not necessarily on who defends Israel and who attacks Israel. Quite frankly, I don't care. What is my main concern is what makes one from 4,000 kilometers away from Israel make this their entire personality.
Yeah, it's that, as I mentioned before, it's that weird sort of we were colonized once, therefore we're going to stand with the anti-imperialist struggle, we're going to stand with all colonized people. And it leads to some pretty funny policy decisions where Ireland generally is moving towards aligning with Iran. I think
which is also an imperialist state.
Yeah.
And the state sponsor of terrorism.
That sort of mindset, Iran is part of the anti-imperialist struggle. It's part of the anti-imperialist core. They're fighting Western, quote-unquote, Western imperialism.
By being part of Russian imperialism.
Yeah, ironically. That's the thing. You've got that with...
what's the mood with Russian imperialism? Russian imperialism is now suddenly halal?
Yeah, it's like with Ireland, because Ireland, they did sanction Russia and they did sort of cut ties with them, but at the same time, you would think the Irish would have a lot more in common with the Ukrainians. Because there is a bit of a similar thing there. You could argue...
Both have a history of a famine endorsed and really created by their imperialist neighbor, arguably. But then again, the Ukrainians are much bigger fans of let's grow our own strength so this doesn't happen again. Whereas Ireland went from the IRA, which at the very least tried to create strength, for better or worse, now into a pretty much pro-victimology kind of historiography.
They sort of try and use their thing as, the internationalism, I guess you could say, trying to use their position in the UN, trying to use their... Because Ireland does have a lot of soft power to an extent, culturally, I mean, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom.
Through its huge diaspora, yes.
Huge diaspora, yeah. And as I mentioned with Iran, it was like when the new president got elected, he wasn't elected, was he? He was just handpicked last year. Usually... when a hostile country, or sort of a country you're not really friendly with, has a new leader, you'll give a very Xi Jinping does this all the time when Britain elects a new prime minister or the US gets a new president. They'll say, "Oh, congratulations, we hope to work with you in the future. Bye bye." It's like a really short. Whereas I think it was Michael D. Higgins' letter to the new president of Iran was a long thing saying, "Congratulations, we are very excited to work with you with all the challenges in the future," and we're just like.
But why though?
Why? It's like, what challenges in the... And in fact, Ireland has hosted the foreign minister of Iran a while back.
To be fair, Ursula von der Leyen did as well. But the way and the circumstances in which that happened are a little bit more raising some eyebrows because it was excessively friendly. And I would have been willing to understand that as well if it were some, financial benefit or... because geopolitical is a bit more difficult, but get something out of it. But oftentimes it just seems like simping for Iran for simping's sake.
Yeah,
and that's what That's what brings me to questioning the whole thing and thinking that it's a more of a mental disorder, mental health issue, rather than any coherent political philosophy. Because it's not like Ireland is getting anything out of it.
Yeah, because Iran does have oil, but then I think.
But they're not importing from Iran.
No, that's the thing I was going to mention. But there is also like regular Irish people who get to do this as well. There's a comedian who's somewhat not really famous, but he's called Teague Hickey, and Teague Hickey he goes on TikTok and goes on social media. He's bashing the Hamas drama essentially, and he got invited to Iran. He got full on invited. He went there. He ended up chanting "Death to Israel." When he got pulled up on it, he's like, "Oh, I didn't know. I just heard the chant and just went, yay." It's like, okay, that's just...
Was the chant in Farsi? Or
Farsi, I was in Farsi, yeah.
Ah, okay, fair enough. Then I guess he can claim plausible deniability. Yeah. I don't speak Farsi, therefore. But, nevertheless, of course, as on an elite level, Ireland had to sanction Russia because they're hosting all sorts of American companies.
Yeah.
So the last thing you need is secondary sanctions from the United States. That would be the economic collapse of the country as a whole. So it's not like they have a choice. So and that's another reason why I suspect that there's a lot of bad faith in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because if it were an honest alignment, ideological alignment with Hamas or with Russian-sponsored terrorist propaganda or whatever, then you would go all in because you actually believe it. But it turns out that, we support Palestine, but, hold on a second, you can't really sanction us, so no, we're not going to go that far away, right?
At least rhetorically, because I think Ireland still does a little bit of trade with Israel and still allows American shipments to go through. And also, but they do have something, they have a new bill, it's the Occupied Territories Bill, where they're banning trade from the West Bank. Any company that does business there. I believe. I'm not sure if it's gone through the...
Well, last time I was in West Bank, Facebook still functioned in the West Bank, which means Facebook breaks the Irish law. So when is Ireland banning Facebook?
Yeah, it's like...
And kicking their headquarters there so it no longer launders money through Ireland. So I guess it doesn't apply like that.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe not really. But,
not really, obviously.
No, obviously.
So that's the kind of hypocrisy that, although I understand it, every single politician is a hypocrite to a certain extent. It does tell you where the priorities are, and the priorities are not in an honest alignment with the philosophy. They're more like a current thing.
I think there is an honest philosophy there. I think it is an underpinning, I guess you could say, because even regular Irish people seem to get involved. As I mentioned earlier, they seem to have that opinion. We were colonised once, we were starved once, therefore we stand with these people. So I think that does bleed into the elite and bleeds into...
Yeah, sure, there is a feedback loop there. The elite thinks one thing, then it seeps into the populace, and then the populace feeds it back to the elite, and on like that it goes, obviously. But at the same time, I will blame the elite more than the plebs, because that's why an elite is there, to do some thinking. Yeah.
And you remind me of something as well. I can't remember, I think this was a conversation I had with someone who is Israeli, who's worked in the Irish... before Ireland pulled their, Israel pulled their ambassador and pulled their embassy from Ireland. They said, well, when it comes to working with, like, for example, Spain, Belgium, or Norway, even though they have very anti-Israel stances, you will eventually get a leader there or a thing there that will be supportive of Israel, and you'll be able to do work there. Ireland, you have no chance. You have no friends there. That's what you told me. Literally, it's like you have no friends in the Irish.
And the reason I blame the elite a little bit more is because the recent election, fine, the president of Ireland is effectively...
it's like, ironically, Israel's president, in a sense, the head of state, but...
Yes, it's the head of state, but with zero influence, kind of like the president of Germany or the president of Hungary. Who the hell knows who the president of Germany is, right? I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Neither do I.
I don't know who the president of Hungary is either, because... Who cares, right? The same thing with Ireland, right? The president of Ireland is not particularly important, but nevertheless, the way she was elected is also very...
I mean, if I remember correctly, she got 60% of the vote? Or
yes, but also about 15% of the votes were intentionally spoiled.
Yeah, that was that whole, what was it called?
Spoil the vote campaign, yes. And I looked into it, so first of all, does it have any judicial effect? No. Okay, fine, so it's a stupid protest. But why is the protest happening? And it turns out there was someone who wanted to run for president of Ireland that did not believe in third worldism.
Yeah.
And that person was just simply barred from running.
Yeah.
And ensured that there were like 3 or 4 third worldists
Yeah.
on the ballot, and pick your favorite poison. So that's why I'm saying that it is the fault of the elite to a greater extent than of the plebs, because even if the plebs wanted an alternative, it's not permitted to them, right? And of course, when I say this, then everyone say, "Oh, my God, you're supporting McGregor, who's an extremist and whatnot." I don't care what the guy's opinion are. I just know that is less third worldist.
I think it had more to do with the fact he was convicted of, was it domestic abuse or something?
Yeah, sure, that was the official excuse, but let's face it, the actual reason was that because he was not third worldist, right? Because there have been politicians in Ireland before who had various criminal convictions in the past, and that didn't prevent them from running from office. Like, come on, suddenly, oh, but he has a conviction of domestic abuse, and given how feministic the laws are in Ireland, you'll have to forgive me if I don't take that conviction too seriously to begin with, right? But okay, legal excuses notwithstanding, the point is that there was at least a segment of the active electorate who did not want the third worldist to be the head of state.
There are sectors of Irish society who don't buy into this whole anti-Israel stuff. They either don't care, or they will generally see themselves in Israel, because there is the Israeli struggle is kind of similar to Ireland in a sense, in some way.
In some ways, yes. The don't care sector is, I'm part of mostly of the don't care sector, and we are the most oppressed group in this conversation. Because nowadays, and when I said this in 2016 or 15, I made a video on this channel called "The Jewish Lobbies that were at best useless and at worst harmful." I got a lot of flack for it, and now 10 years later, I can just link to that video and I told you.
Yeah.
Because in the meantime,
like APAC and stuff.
Yes, and not just APAC, the ADL as well.
Oh, so, the ADL, they're insane.
The ADL.
Even Israelis don't like them.
Of course not.
Israelis think they're insane.
Yeah, no, the ADL is a mental asylum, of course. Yeah. But the point is that in both the pro and the anti political groups, let's put it this way, have raised the pitch quite a bit, and oftentimes to absurd levels, that, those of us in the don't care sector were like, why are you all crazy?
Yeah.
Right? Because, in the case of Romania, it's even simpler. Don't care is like 60% of the population.
Except for most countries.
Yeah, we like Israel about 30% of the population, something like that. And we like Hamas between 3 and 6, depends on which polls you choose to believe. In some polls, it's even less than 3. But the thing is that the largest part, which is we don't care, oftentimes comes with this caveat that we're kind of sick and tired of this whole kebab shilling, or the other way around, of every decision being thought of as through the lens of how does this help or harm Israel? Like, can we just not care?
Yeah.
And in the case of Romania, it's even weirder because Israel is a Romanian conspiracy, ultimately.
Wow.
Ultimately. So, and we're even closer. It's like from this city, there's daily flights to Tel Aviv, and it's like 1 hour and 15 minutes by plane. So there is part of what we would call the strategical neighborhood, right? Strategical vicinity, right? Because Turkey is in NATO, and just after Turkey is basically Israel. So it's part of the strategic vicinity, and the trade with Israel is pretty high, especially in military fields and tourism. And even so, we have far fewer people here who give a damn one way or the other, right? There's not a huge pro-Israeli lobby. There's not a huge anti-Israeli lobby. Most people be like, yeah, whatever, mate. So that's what interests me the most, is what makes countries from very far away from Israel, with no serious direct involvement, like Ireland, have so many people give so much of a damn about the minutiae of Israeli politics or Jordanian politics.
The whole conflict in general, really.
Yeah. Why? What makes it? Because we see ourselves in Palestinians is not a good enough reason, right? We see ourselves in the struggle of Cambodians against the Khmer Rouge as well, but we don't have a huge pro-Cambodia or pro-Khmer Rouge.
Because it is pretty interesting, but I think it's generally always just been, ever since independence, I want to say, or even probably before, it's always had that. But one of the things I found really interesting was speaking to a few Irish people, or mostly their fellow Irish people, I guess you could say, is the whole thing is how they consider the Palestinians also victims of British imperialism, and that's a big part of Irish culture, that whole history of Britain, that opposition to Britain. There was a whole thing where they compared them to, they said, the black and tans, the paramilitary who were involved in before independence, or one of their leaders, Hugh Tudor, after Ireland got independence, he was sent to Mandatory Palestine, the British Mandate. The thing they keep forgetting to mention, he was only there for a year. That's the comparison they make. The black and tans were sent to Mandatory Palestine to oppress the Arabs, so therefore it's a little bit
Right. But the thing is that if you consider Mandatory Palestine as an inherently oppressive structure, well, that means it was oppressing the Jews just as much as the Arabs.
But they see it as a way as I said, mentioned, they compare the Jews, the Jewish Zionist settlers, the Jews, to the plantation of Ulster. They consider the Jews foreign colonial settlers who stole native land.
Right.
Which is also common in other left-wing groups, across the world. But
half of my family is from around the city where the Zionist movement started, which is Focșani in the eastern part of Romania. And in one of their diaries is actually mentioned the first Zionist Congress, which was held in Focșani about 20 years prior to the one in Switzerland that everyone knows it. Yeah, so, and those people, when they decided to move to what is today Israel, to conduct Aliyah, as they would call it, I can assure you we didn't send them there by force.
Yeah.
They made the choice to do that. So it's a little bit more, it was definitely not part of a settler colonialist program in the sense imagined by some Irish nationalists or Irish...
Even the left generally as well.
Or the left in general these days, yes. It was just not that. Again, if you want to convince me that a place that has been called Judea for like 30 centuries is nowadays colonized by some people called the Jews, I'm sorry, mate. It just doesn't make any sense. And this ties down to probably our next topic, which is the post-colonial left, which is not even intellectually coherent, barring any emotional attachment to any side in the Middle Eastern conflict. It's not just
anti-Western, really.
Yeah, it's more or less anti-Western. It's not even
their definition of colonialism is literally mangled just so it fits European, what they perceive as European colonialism to a thing. But they exclude things like Arab colonization and the Ottoman Empire and things of that nature. And
right, so the Ottoman Empire doesn't exist.
It does exist. They just don't consider it colonial, just like they consider Israel or South Africa or Rhodesia, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the Amharic colonization of Tigray didn't happen, and it's not happening.
Oh, it did happen. It's just not colonization.
Right.
It's conquest.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Have to try and make that distinction.
Right. And what's the difference between conquest and colonization?
To them, it's colonization is replacing quote unquote native people with foreign settlers.
Right. And conquest
is just taking control of a certain territory. And I make the argument saying, well, technically Britain didn't colonize India then, because they didn't replace the people.
Right, there you go. Yeah. So okay, fair enough. How does one end up thinking like that?
Where does it start? And that's a good question, because my argument is it starts mainly in the universities, but I'm going to say in Britain it also starts in school, especially when you learn about the British Empire and you were told how evil it is. It's the most evil thing in all of human history. We were the worst. We were, the worst slavers, the worst colonizers, the worst everything.
You guys ended slavery.
Yeah, we ended. That's funny as well. I mentioned that as well. We ended slavery. But they don't mention the Arab slave trade, which was far longer and far worse.
And some of it still continues today.
Yeah, like in the UAE and
UAE less so, but Qatar had legal
Mauritania.
Slavery until 2021. And Mauritania 2023 or 2024, very recently,
And it's still part of that culture as well, Mauritania.
Of course, yeah. But even just in legislation, I mean, if you go by legislation, Britain were the first to abolish slavery because it was like 12th century or something like that. On the British Isles.
On the British Isles, in the 18th century, or the 19th century, I should say. It was 1800s, wasn't it?
For the whole empire. But in the Isles themselves, it goes back to like 12th or 13th century, right?
Yeah.
Slavery on the British Isles got abolished in the 13th century. Meanwhile, you have places in the world that abolished legally slavery like in this decade.
Yeah, it's just like
and yet somehow the people who abolished it 700 years ago are the worst slavers.
yeah, yeah, just
So again, how does one end up thinking like this?
and said what goes for the education system, and because I study politics at university, and we start learning about post-colonialism, post-colonial thinkers, and a lot of them, you have people like Frantz Fanon. I mentioned Frantz Fanon. He was born in Martinique. He was a black guy who was born there, and he ended up in Algeria around about the time of independence, and he wrote a book called Wretched of the Earth, which effectively argues that this is a really mangled synopsis, but effectively argues that when quote-unquote colonized people, kill their oppressors and fight back, it's therapeutic and self-actualizing in a way. And a lot of people compare that, for example, to Hamas on October 7th. You saw so many academics coming out and literally celebrating, saying this is decolonization in action. This is, this is an occupied, oppressed people fighting against their colonizers. And the Israelis deserved it because they were holding a music festival on what's it called? On stolen land outside a concentration camp. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like something Mengele could come up with. But okay, fair enough. Now, in a sense, I actually agree with them, although for entirely different reasons. Like, I agree that decolonization is fundamentally a violent movement, and it necessarily leads to violence. I mean, that is true.
Yeah,
Every single decolonizer from the 1940s onwards eventually led up to violence and making things worse off for everyone, both for the oppressed and for the oppressors, right? And we can see this through the exceptions, like I don't know, Angola, for instance, did not acquiesce to the Pan-African decolonization thought pattern.
I mean,
and nowadays Angola is far better off than the decolonized neighbors, right? I'm just saying, right?
Yeah,
so in that sense, I actually agree with them. Decolonization is fundamentally violent, the way it is understood by the decolonizers themselves. But by the same token, I'm like, okay, so does that? Why doesn't that extend to, well, again, Ukrainians?
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of these people in this argument space, let's put it this way, tend to be incredibly pro-Russia.
Yeah,
right.
Well, it's fair. You mentioned that being pro-Ukraine is kind of left-coded, but there are still quite a few pro-Russia people on the
left,
left.
On the far left, it has always been the case.
Yeah,
it's not even a new thing
because they consider sort of Russia fighting against NATO imperialism. I mean, we've got Zara Sultana, who's an MP, and she's an independent kind of. She started her new party, which is called Your Party, which is funny. they haven't got a name for it yet. They had a poll saying which name would you like, which name should we choose for it. I hope they pick my decision. I hope they pick my choice.
Which is what?
Jezbollah. Literally, but she came out recently and said NATO is an imperialist thing. We should pull out of NATO, and Zelensky's not he doesn't represent the working classes. And when the invasion happened, she was one of the 12 MPs who joined the Stop the War coalition, who are basically Russian shells, basically saying, we shouldn't support Ukraine, we should, stay out of this whole thing. And but that's sort of the mindset. They think NATO and Western influence is imperialism and oppressive.
Right. Okay, I actually agree that Zelensky doesn't represent the working class because he's not part of the working class. But so what?
Yeah, there's more pressing issues going on. I'm sorry. Than class consciousness.
And second of all, does Vladimir Putin represent the working class
no.
in Russia? Oh, hell no!
Oligarchy.
Like hell no!
No.
So just because someone doesn't represent the working class, it's not. It's the kind of so what type of argument.
Weird. They also use realist arguments and realism in geopolitics, which is ironic because back in the day during the Cold War, they were using realist arguments were used to justify the blockade of Cuba.
Yes.
And these people are against the blockade of Cuba, which is really, really ironic.
And, realism is in itself a word that got perverted, because that's everything the far left touches turns to shit. So it's not a surprise. I mean, their biggest cheerleader now, what's the name of that analyst who now wants to basically press Ukraine to surrender, to capitulate. But the same guy in '92 was arguing against Ukraine giving up the nuclear weapons because
Mearsheimer. John
Mearsheimer, yes,
Yeah, Mearsheimer.
Mearsheimer, yeah. He was actually arguing for the actual realist position, which is no, you can't give up the nuclear weapons when you're neighboring Russia. That's a terrible idea.
His whole thing is like trying to get Russia on side to fight against China. That's his whole position at the end of the day. But
to be fair, that kind of goal is inherently anti-Russian because in such a dispute, China doesn't even have to do mobilization. They just have to do economic warfare until they buy up the entirety of Russia. Which, by the way, is already happening, but at a slower pace. So then there's that. But it's one of the many reasons why these people fail to capture the mainstream. It's not, I mean, from their perspective, everyone is a Zionist shill, right? But the reality is that the reason they're not capturing the mainstream is not because everyone is a Zionist shill. Most people don't care. It's because you guys are crazy.
It's literally Hamas base type shit. I said it comes from like the Franz Fanon idea of decolonized people fighting against their oppressors, quote unquote. And they consider Israel a settler colony. It's these foreign European settlers who have stolen the land from the poor native people. And it's really weird when you listen to the propaganda from like Al Jazeera and the like. In English, it's always, the Palestinians are an Aboriginal people and their culture is rooted in the land. And then in Arabic, it's the propaganda is, we're fighting for the glory of Islam, the glory of the Arab people against the Jews. They'll quote the Hadiths and the Quran saying, this is what I mean, you go to some of these protests and they will literally chant Kaiba, Kaiba, Ya Yahud.
Yes.
Literally.
Those kinds of images.
Don't worry, it's just anti-Zionism, not anti-Semitism, bro.
Yes, of course. And those kinds of images rarely emerge with English subtitles.
That was a whole thing in the BBC when they did a documentary in Gaza, and they mistranslated jihad as resistance and Yahud as the IDF.
Yes, and they also the poor oppressed child was the child of a Hamas official.
Yeah, he was literally a Hamas official.
What's the thing with the BBC? How come you guys can't abolish it? I mean, there was at some point someone appointed by a conservative government who tried to abolish the mandatory license thing.
Yeah, license.
Did that work eventually?
No. We're still
You're
BBC,
still paying the license. All right.
Yeah.
But the BBC itself used to be, when I was a kid in the 80s, the BBC was not the standard of objectivity, but it was a source you could at least trust at the first glance, because the idea of them getting it fundamentally wrong was unconceivable. Sure, they would be wrong because of some minor bias of the editor or some mistranslation here and there, but they would not get the fundamentals wrong.
Whereas
nowadays they intentionally get the fundamentals wrong.
I think it is ideological capture at this point.
It is. And that happened relatively recently.
Yeah.
If you look up the Panorama documentaries on any topic in 97 or even all the way to 2005 or so, it was nowhere near as bad. Even the most controversial stuff, they would at least try to be somewhat fair. Sure, with some bias, because there is no such thing as unbiased people, but the bias was relatively evident and small.
They did some. Louis Theroux recently made one of his documentaries on the settlers in the West Bank. And it feels like he intentionally picked the craziest people he could find, like Daniel Weiss, some of the people in Hebron. But then when he finds a Palestinian, he'll just find someone who says, I just want equal rights and things. And you can tell that was kind of... Because I've been to the West Bank.
It's an intentional selection,
and I've spoken to Palestinians there, and their entire position is not equal rights, two states, whatever. It's destroy Israel, get rid of the Jews, establish an Islamic state. That is literally the position.
Yeah, that is the majority position, yes. Or at the very least, if it's not the majority, it's definitely a much more significant minority than it's...
I mean, there are two-state solution people there, but there's not as... And maybe it has something to do with maybe they don't really say it out loud because the way Palestinian society kind of works.
Yes.
It's very honor-shame based.
More honor-shame based and more clan-based and whatnot.
And if you break away from that,
sometimes there can be consequences, not necessarily violent ones, but economic ones, first and foremost, and sometimes social as well. But what I'm saying is that even there is a huge segment of I don't really care. And just like on this side of the conversation, on that side of the conversation as well, those of us of the I don't really care are the most oppressed.
Yeah, the most oppressed.
Because we get flack from both sides. And, for instance, take the construction workers in Israel. A lot of them do come from the Philistine communities,
Yeah.
right? And,
Or used to.
or used
Not
to.
as much
Yes.
since October 7th.
Yes, and after October 7th, those people who'd done nothing wrong, effectively,
Yeah.
got to bear the consequences of, first of all, of Hamas, and then later on of Israeli retaliation. And they're like, can we just don't care that
Yeah,
much?
I
need a
think-
wage, bro.
I think that because I do sometimes go on TikTok, and there is a Palestinian girl who says, "Well, I don't really care about the conflict as much. I don't really care about Israel existing. I just want to, go to university, study, and then, do whatever." And then she's suffering the consequences of that.
Yeah, because even when it comes to universities, if you want to go to university, you're 19 and you want to go to university.
You
and
probably have to go to a foreign university.
Yeah, you're from Gaza. Well, the easiest way is actually to go to Israel because they do have studies in Arabic. You don't
Yeah.
even have to learn Hebrew or English, at least not at first. And
I guess the issue trying to get permits and stuff, because Gaza's kind of was, or still is, kind of a little bit of a risk.
Yes, but as a student, at least at first, you can get the residence permit relatively easy. And also, if you go to Jerusalem, you don't even need a residence permit because you can just commute, or you
Yeah.
could nowadays.
Yeah, it's
A
a little
little
bit
bit
strict.
more difficult, but still, it's still doable. I'm pretty sure Ramallah is still accessible. You've been there more recently.
I've only been to Bethlehem, not been to Ramallah yet.
Right.
Ramallah's probably next on the list.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they're still accessible because otherwise we would have heard about it
Yeah.
if there weren't.
Like I say, you mentioned with the whole not caring crowd, it's pretty interesting because the pro-Palestinian side would always turn around and say, if you didn't have a position on the conflict, would go, oh, well, silence is complicity. You're being complicit in genocide for being silent.
Yes, which is that's how you know that the pro-Palestine comes fundamentally from the far left.
Yeah.
Because the far left has gotten extremely adept at chasing away its potential allies.
Yeah.
Because that kind of rhetoric is the fastest way to turn your opposition into the majority position.
Or it's if you don't 100% agree with us, you support apartheid and genocide and colonialism. And like the Israeli side, I think I mentioned this in one of my Substack articles. It was how I got into being more pro-Israel. I wouldn't say activism, but like getting into this stuff was literally meeting two Israeli guys in Bangkok. And the way they mentioned it was just like, well, this is my side of the story. Just read more about it, and if you become pro-Palestinian, that's on you. But it's not really a. Whereas the pro-Palestinian side is more, if you don't 100% agree with everything, you support genocide.
The thing is that this comes off the wrong way in how should I put this? Everyone, well, not everyone, but a significant minority at the very least, if not a majority, of individuals under the age of 25 in most parts of the world tends to be relatively immune to being called crazy, radical, or whatnot. And just like in the past, young people are less susceptible to any sort of shame. So, when you tell someone that if you don't agree with me, then that means you support genocide and apartheid.
Most people don't give a fuck.
Yeah, especially for young men, be like, so you're accusing me of supporting strength. Well, hell yeah, of course I support strength. Are you kidding me?
Yes,
Why would I support weakness?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that joke, right? I'm not being a racist because that would be wrong, and wrong is being wrong is for women, right?
No, it's being wrong is for black people is the actual original.
Or that, right?
That's the original punchline.
But the point I'm making here is that in a way this is a blessing in disguise because this kind of position cannot reach, and that's why Ireland is so special.
Most people. Well, I would say most people don't care, but they do tend to lean. I think even most people who don't care do have somewhat leaning towards. Like I've spoken to like family members and a few other people, and even though they don't really care about the conflict, I remember someone saying, "Well, to be fair, if I was the Prime Minister of Israel, and October 7th happened under my watch, I'd do the same as Netanyahu. I would do the exact same."
Yeah, well, I disagree with King Bibi.
Bibi,
I am accusing him of being excessively moderate and soft. No, seriously. I'm a big fan of Project Parking Lot, but not because I'm a big fan of apartheid or whatever, but I'm a big fan of crushing your enemies.
Yeah.
And as long as the enemy still exists, well,
Or still a threat at the very least.
yeah.
I mean, Argentina still exists, and when we gave back the Chagos Islands, gave back quote unquote, Argentina started getting a bit funny, going, yeah, is the Falkland Islands on the menu? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if we try anything, well, maybe not now. I think if Argentina invaded the Falklands today, Keir Starmer would probably...
We'll apologize.
Yes. We are so sorry that we, something like that.
Yeah, luckily Javier Milei has more important things to do than care about the
economy,
Falklands. Yeah, but the point being that the politics of Israel itself has leaned excessively moderate where it should not have, and too extremist where it should have been more moderate. Let's put it this way.
Because it has moved more to the right since the Second Intifada.
Yes.
I think Ehud Barak was the last proper left-wing, and he was the one...
By Israeli standards.
Yeah. I mean, the 2000 Camp David summit and the deal he offered was incredibly generous. It was incredible. I think he took a few settlements from the West Bank, the big ones like Ariel or Gush Etzion, but the majority of it was going to the Palestinians, and they had land swaps. They would have had effectively full sovereignty, minus maybe some border security stuff. And in response to that, Yasser Arafat launched a second Intifada.
Yeah.
And then that sort of made the Israelis realize, these people don't want peace.
And that's a very similar situation that you will see in the coming years with Russia, regardless of the outcome of the war.
Yeah.
Because, if Russia wins, whatever that looks like, in the occupied territories, there's going to be a non-stop, never-ending terrorism problem.
Yeah.
And just like in Israel, right? Because, in Israel, unless they wear specific clothing, who's an Arab and who's a Jew is a very murky thingy.
Which is funny, because a lot of people, especially who haven't been to Israel or don't understand Israel and just perceive all Israelis as white Europeans who've stolen the land or whatever. Yeah, if you stood a Palestinian and Israeli side by side, you would not be able to tell the difference. Especially considering most Israelis are Mizrahi. They're from the Middle East, effectively.
Yeah, so sure, there are exceptions with, some of the Philistines being self-evidently Arab, and some of the Israeli citizens being self-evidently European, but that's very rare. Most of the time is a very murky thingy. And, if you were to run a genetic study, it would be like the genetic difference between Romanians and Hungarians, which is none, right? Because this part of the world, all the way to northern Greece, has the highest genetic diversity in Europe. Because, everyone's settled in on top of everyone else. Which is the same case in southern Lebanon, what is today Israel, the Palestinian territories, most of Jordan. Same thing. Everyone's settled in there on top of everyone else, and it's a lot of intermingling. So, it's very difficult. Who's who? Is very difficult. The same will be true, and to an extent already is true in Russia itself. Because a Ukrainian usually has a relatively Russian-sounding name. Doesn't speak Russian with an accent. So, which one is the Ukrainian saboteur? Right? And that probably helped a lot, although I shouldn't put it in these terms, but still, it probably helped a lot of the Islamic terrorism in Israel. Because no matter how many filters the IDF puts, ultimately, figuring out who's suspicious and who's not is still an art. The only way you're going to do
that is through Ben Gurion Airport or the border crossings. Ben Gurion Airport's pretty intense for the interrogations. I mentioned the first time I went to Israel, I actually got pulled aside for the...
Yeah, well, I usually get pulled aside if the border patrol guys or woman speaks Romanian, because they want to practice their language. And it's also a very easy way of figuring out if the passport is fake or not. Right? I think I told you this story. I have a friend who's born and raised in Bucharest, and his great-grandparents are also from Bucharest, and his great-grandparents are also from Bucharest. But the guy looks incredibly Arab. So he would get pulled over almost every checkpoint because of that. Until in one of the checkpoints there was an IDF officer who spoke Romanian, and then he noted in the database, no, he's legit. And that's when all of the pullovers stopped. Sure, I get it that adds some friction. And every time this happens, because Israel, to their sometimes their credit, sometimes to their detriment, but nevertheless they've maintained this policy that just come and visit Israel, bro, right? they maintained this policy, which meant a lot of critics of Israel also got to visit
To an
Israel.
extent, I think some critics do get, rejected. I mean, Owen Jones managed to go in somehow.
That's
But
what I'm
he got-
saying. I mean, if
But then
all
his visa got revoked as he was in, or his, what's it called? I can't remember. The travel authorization got revoked while he was in Israel.
Oh yeah, the travel that's what it's called, the travel authorization. But the thing is that for a long time after October 7, I heard that the measures got
Yeah, they got a lot
tightened.
stricter. They got
Yeah, but up until October 7, pretty much everyone, unless the raging anti-Semites, okay,
Yeah.
no, but pretty much everyone else
Yeah.
was allowed in. But then, it hit differently with the I don't care and the I like Israel crowds usually came back with, oh, come on, it's not a bad place,
Yeah, and,
whatever. Whereas with the critics, some of them changed their minds, to their credit, but others described the exact same phenomenon entirely differently, because it hits differently.
Like, could you give me an example?
The example being exactly this one, when you get pulled over because you fall foul of some of the profiling measures that the IDF employs, especially after
Or the border security. Or,
right. In my case, having been to more than 120 countries, being pulled over randomly is like another day ending in Y, right?
Yeah.
It just happens all the time. But for people who travel a lot less,
they'll think it's apartheid. They'll think it's discrimination.
Yeah.
They'll think it's Jewish supremacy. They use that word a lot. Jewish supremacy.
yeah, it hits a lot different to them. That's something that Israel can't exactly correct, but I would advocate for a policy that would allow some of the critics to just suffer the consequences of their ideas. Like, for instance, I'm very mad that the IDF didn't just wave in Greta Thunberg to Gaza, right?
That would have been.
Yes, I would have waved her in.
Yeah.
Right, sure, search the bags so you don't have weapons and things like that, and off you go. Gaza is that way. Go ahead. Go. I would just let her go in. Oh, by the way, please sign here that we're not responsible if you get blown into the smithereens. But other than that, go ahead.
Yeah.
Why not? Because that's another thing. A lot of these policies on the Israeli side are still coming from a mentality that we can solve this in a civilized manner.
Yeah.
Whereas the truth is that we can't.
Yeah, because the problem is Palestinians will just never. Their whole thing is their entire culture is pretty much opposition to Israel. You know, the whole right of return for refugees. You know, the whole how refugee status is now. They're the only refugees, I think, that are actually it's hereditary.
Yes.
Literally, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid, who are multi-millionaire models in Los Angeles, they're refugees.
Yeah.
They literally classify as refugees under the UNRWA definition.
Yes, the UNRA, RWA, whatever, is one of those institutions that really do make my point that giving a damn whatever the UN thinks is wrong.
Yeah,
is wrong for anyone, regardless of.
Well, you say critics of Israel will say, well, the immigration and citizenship policy is an example of apartheid and discrimination. I'm like, Ireland has the exact same law. The law has a law of return type thing, and is actually a lot less stringent than Israel's. In Israel, I think you actually have to live there to get your passport. In Ireland, no, you can just go to the embassy, show up some documents. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but yeah, I don't have to live in Ireland. I can just get my passport. I'm in the process of,
Yeah, because so you can continue to travel in the EU more freely, I suppose.
to an extent, because it's not in Schengen. Ireland's not in Schengen.
Ireland is not in Schengen, but it has free travel.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm just going to go back to Ireland about the thing with Israel, because the ICJ case is going on. Ireland has joined on the South Africa thing, South Africa v Israel, and they're trying to redefine genocide to basically include civilian casualties in an urban conflict. I think their exact words are, there's this culture of recklessness and it endangers the lives of civilians, so we're just going to broaden the definition of genocide so Israel gets... And if you sit there for a second, it's like, if this goes through and this sets precedent, then pretty much every single urban conflict in which civilians die is now a genocide.
Okay, then can that be retroactive and get Sinn Féin banned?
Yeah, literally.
Can we do that?
Did they commit genocide against the English? No.
I'm just saying.
Literally that.
Although it has not been fully examined, the first examinations of the civilian to military casualty ratio
It's looking like it's going to be the lowest in,
It looks like if
second lowest.
Yeah, if it's not the first or the second lowest, definitely among the lowest in history of urban warfare.
Yeah.
Which tells you something about how precise or restrained, or maybe both,
Yeah.
IDF was. Which is a policy that, if I were the Prime Minister of Israel, I would abolish it.
Yeah.
Like, screw the precision and the
I think because
restraint.
the fear is, I mean, because people say Israel, has this propaganda trying to get people involved to be supportive of them, especially in the West. Israel really hasn't had a good propaganda run. They're not really that obsessed with it. There's the old Golda Meir quote, we would rather have a bad image and be alive than be dead and have a good image, or something like that. And that's sort of the mentality Israelis have had until fairly recently. Because there is that fear of diplomatic isolation and, becoming...
There is a school of thought in the political
South Africa.
Elite of Israel, although in the case of Israel, because it's a small country, everyone is somebody to somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it yourself how easy it is to access important people in Israel. It's really easy.
It's so easy.
You just make a phone call, really that easy.
Literally, I know like a hand. For you, I know if you.
Yeah, even the cold approaches work. I'm serious, because if you
just go, do you know BB? Hey, I know. Yeah.
No,
He's my neighbor. Yeah.
Even getting to BB is actually not that difficult as people think. Which, by the way, it's also easier than it is to Ireland. I mean, accessing physically the Irish Prime Minister is a little bit more difficult than accessing BB.
Yeah.
Not by much, but
that's funny because I have a friend called Ruth, and she works in a hotel in Jerusalem. She's seen BB quite a few times, actually.
Yeah. No, it's very easy. But there is a school of thought in the Israeli political establishment that is, well, how about we lose the propaganda war, but we win the actual war?
Yeah.
And consequences be damned. And on the other hand, you have the moderate, as they're called there, which is let's try to win both, or at least not make a fool of ourselves in both.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of policy that I hold in contempt. Because, I'm more with Golda Meir on this one. How about we fix the real problem first and deal with the propaganda consequences later?
I think the issue is that Israel does rely a lot on the West. And if the West just cuts ties, I was going to... This whole thing of, if you said you want to dismantle Israel 10 years ago, people look at you like you were a crazy person. Genuinely. Like, I've written that in some of my Substack articles. If you said, even on the left 10 years ago, even the extreme, the sort of more public-facing left, they would still be in favour of Israel. They wouldn't advocate for its destruction. And if you advocated for it, you'd be seen as a crazy person. But now, it is very popular to call for the dismantling of Israel to be replaced with a one democratic state with equal rights for all that'll be secular. And I mean, we've even got Zohran Mamdami. Yeah, he's the elections I think are today actually.
Yeah, or tonight, something
like that. And his whole position is he is against Israel. He wants to see Israel destroyed, and he uses the term equal rights for all, democracy, yada yada yada.
Here's another weird thing. Why is the local election in New York City about
Israel?
Yeah,
he's literally there was other policies there like really socialist policies like state run.
I know he wants to create a kolkhoz. Yes, I know that. But mayors with communist ideas, we've seen them in the past, and they will be in the future as well. And that's fine. If the electorate wants to try out some socialism in their locality, fine, and you do that. Enjoy your starving. We'll just charge you more for the food until you come back to your senses. But why is the mayor? Sure, New York City is America's cultural center. Everything is downstream from there. It's the most important city in the U.S., of course. But still, it's just one city, even though it's a big one. Why is the mayor of New York City have opinions about foreign policy?
I think because Israel has just become, the Israel-Palestine conflict has become so big in the last few years. It's become a massive, everyone is talking about it, and at least on the political thing, it's been dominating the headlines for 2 years. And everyone, especially in, I guess you could say our circles, and my circles, everyone has opinions on the thing, and it is sort of that's why, and I think a few people do vote based on that alone. Are you against the genocide? Do you want to cut arms to Israel? Do you want to... there are people who support Zara Sultana because her thing is we need to isolate Israel like South Africa. We need to cut ties, implement economic sanctions, the whole shebang, and that's part of the.
Yeah, I remember reading something like that about the recent Dutch elections, that one of the reasons Geert Wilders lost some of the seats is because he was excessively Zionist.
Yeah.
Right, which, I don't know, maybe true considering
To an
how...
extent, because there is quite many Moroccans.
Yeah, considering how many Moroccans live in the Netherlands, and many of them do have citizenship. I could believe that but then, they did not vote for the anti-Semitic left. They voted for the global homo left,
Yeah.
which actually is not pro-Palestinian. So, I'm like, maybe there are some votes lost here and there, but not that many, quite frankly.
When it came to Britain, I was going to mention Britain because you mentioned something very interesting. We, in the last election, 2024, we had members of parliament voted exclusively on the pro-Gaza platform, and they were all from Muslim majority areas, and they were all Muslim, and their whole position was we're against Israel, and they won purely on that, and it's like, the fuck? It's insane. It's just, but I guess to the Muslim community in general, can I say globally to an extent?
To an extent.
Yeah. The whole thing with Israel-Palestine is very important to them because they see the Palestinians as part of the Ummah, and they see the Jews are these infidels, these kuffar who've stolen Muslim land and oppressing their fellow Muslims. So that's a really botched way of describing it, but that's sort of the gist of it. So, and that's sort of what we had in England,
Right.
Okay.
But while I could understand the Pakistani in England voting like that, it disgusts me, but at least I understand where he's coming from. I find it much more difficult to understand, and that's why I wanted to poke your brain on this a lot more, is what does...
Western leftists.
Yeah,
in Ireland.
why do Western left, what do they gain from it? And especially, I'm thinking of a working class white guy from Ireland. What is he doing at a
I
pro-Palestine?
think it's sort of an emotional thing to them. It's they see themselves as on the right side of history. They see themselves as fighting against oppression. It's a moral thing to them, I guess you could say. Some people have compared it to like the South Africa battle of our time. Israel is South Africa of the modern era. They say, well, we're fighting for global justice, and it is just a pat on the back thing.
Right.
The whole I do thing.
Right.
To an extent.
So I guess I'm gonna get crucified when I say, well, you guys were wrong about South Africa, so. and you're wrong. You were wrong about Rhodesia, and now you're wrong about Israel. How about you're on the wrong side of history every single time?
Rhodesia's interesting because more and more people are starting to. There is even among people in the centre going, and you've mentioned this in Zimbabwe, even the black population, like Ian Smith was right. Ian Smith was
for
right.
the most part, he was right. Yes.
Yeah.
You can check this out. There was some, I forget the name of the radio station, as a Facebook page. The post is still up, so if you look up close enough, you'll find it. Where the radio station in Harare just posted a picture of Ian Smith, and it's like, today he would be turning 100.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to our Prime Minister, right?
Yeah, and everyone's heart reacts.
So a lot of heart reacts, but there were like 5,000 comments, 98% of them from black people, obviously.
Yeah.
And nearly all of them were like, yep, the best Prime Minister this country ever had.
Yeah.
Or even more attacking of the positions against Ian Smith, being like, all of these so-called Negro nationalists, they're all running on his highways, that.
Yeah.
But at least with Ian Smith, because I've looked recently through the archives, there is an archive video, I think it was on ITN, it was a British station for sure, and there is a video with Ian Smith being like, oh yeah, so I guess we'll be under sanctions. Well, I guess we'll plow through them.
Yeah.
We'll find a way around them. Whereas with Israel, there is a more genuine fear of sanctions.
They can't really do it because they wouldn't be able to do anything. They're surrounded kind of by enemies in a sense. I mean, well, to an extent. Syria's getting a bit friendlier. Egypt's a little bit funny. Jordan and Saudi.
Jordan is their de facto ally in the region, for sure.
And Saudi as well.
And Saudi now.
Saudi pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that probably if this becomes even more entrenched in various political elites, this will have to be the way.
Yeah.
Fine, let it play through. We'll use Saudi Arabia to work around sanctions. Good luck sanctioning Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And that's it for a while.
Yeah.
A while being, I don't know, 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Probably not more than that. But let's give it 10 years. And that's it, because at some point someone has to stand up to these people. Ian Smith tried, and he would have succeeded if he were a little bit luckier.
Yeah.
But then he failed. The apartheid regime tried, and they were being successful with it. But then
you
they,
had de Klerk. And then,
and then de Klerk decided that, okay, maybe not really,
Yeah.
and he was wrong. But the thing is that these kinds of sanctions actually can be worked around, and oftentimes you can succeed if you have a populace that has the grit to do it. And you have
Israel is kind of they do have grit, but
they do have the technological advancement to withstand it.
Yeah.
But the populace is too westernized.
yeah, they have grit. I mean, they've all joined the military.
Yeah, but not to the extent of enduring a longer
Yeah,
type of suffering.
concern.
Right? Russia has the opposite position. It has the population willing to endure the longer type of suffering, but it does not have the technological advancement.
They're already facing issues.
Yes. So no, Russia has the opposite problem, but generally, Zimbabwe, Rhodesia at the time, and even South Africa had both. The population was willing to endure some suffering, and it had the technological advancement to withstand it. And they failed mostly because of a failure of will,
Yeah.
not because of something else.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, people still consider, I mean, the whole argument is we need this whole, what's it called? They see it as destroying Israel as decolonization. It's providing equal rights for everyone. And they have this, Westerners especially have this weird vision that it will just be a secular, liberal, democratic state that will provide equal rights for all. It's like, do you know how the Middle East works? Can you name me one country in that region, apart from Jordan maybe, that provides equal rights for all?
Not even Jordan provides equal rights for all.
And is secular, and is a democracy?
Jordan is somewhat democratic. It's probably the most democratic Arab country, yes. But what that means in practice is that the secular king has a veto.
Yeah.
And he's been very busy lately vetoing legislation.
I'm working on an article that I hope they'll publish on Substack, and I hope it gets published on the FA thing as well, about why the one-state solution will never work, and why I call it the Rwanda solution. That's my nickname for it. It will end in a genocide. It will, when you have that much hatred. I mean, if you take away the hatred, I mean, the Islamic world and the Arab world doesn't really tend to treat minorities very well at all.
Depends which part of Dar al-Islam, but the Middle Eastern part, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Egypt with the Coptic Christians.
To be fair,
Pakistan with.
but this does have a solution, or not a solution, but a better trade-off. The problem is that we can't have that trade-off this decade. That is to say, if you look at the way Dar al-Islam used to function until 1923, really, with the abolition of the caliphate, was in practice, if you judge the outcomes rather than the ideas, it functioned much better than it functions today.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there is that famous speech in the Egyptian parliament by Nasser in Egypt, who's basically mocking Islamists.
He was taking the piss, he's taking the piss out of the hijab.
Yes.
He was going, you can wear it if you want. I'm not going to force my daughter to wear it. You can wear it.
But you can imagine these loons wants to make it mandatory for everyone, and the whole parliament laughs.
Yeah.
Right?
You would never hear that now.
Yeah, because Nasser grew up in a Dar al-Islam that had a caliph and had clear limitations on where you can go with it, right? Once the caliphate got abolished, it's one of those decisions which seemed right in the context when Kemal Atatürk did it, but turns out that it was a really terrible decision. It has multiple downstream consequences that we're living with it 100 and something years later. There is a school of Alexandria that tries to reform Dar al-Islam from a religious perspective, that tries to, not to bring back the caliph, because that's impossible, but at the very least to create, how should I put it, the Hanafi plus school of thought, which is basically trying to do the same thing as they're trying in Uzbekistan with the Center of Islamic Civilization project, which is, guys, at some point we were the global center of science. Let's get back to that.
I think there was an idea back, especially when Britain colonized Egypt, there was an idea of like, let's try and emulate the West and their scientific stuff, but in an Islamic framework.
Which, again, is not something new. I mean, in the 1400s, the science was in the Islamic world.
Yeah, Europe was the back.
Yeah, we were still backward. Yeah, of course.
And it's kind of flipped nowadays to a less, well, that's a bit Orientalist. We'll get onto that. But don't worry.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that that will succeed eventually. The Alexandria School of Thought or the Uzbek Center of Islamic Civilization or some combination between these, eventually it will succeed. The problem is that it will happen, hopefully, this century, but not this decade.
It won't happen. I mean, if
It cannot happen this decade. No.
And
Because they've only started working at it like 15 years ago, and an
Yeah.
initiative like this requires at least 50.
Yeah, and it's only
years.
been really in maybe the Gulf states and a handful of other places. The Palestinian territories, fuck no. They're still very, very Islamist.
Now, another thing that our friends on the left are probably unaware of is how much disdain for the Philistine cause exists in the elite
Yeah.
of pretty much every other Arab state. This is the problem that most people aren't aware of this. Like, you know, those, I don't want to say, those bundles of sticks, or British
Yeah.
word for cigarettes.
Oh, the quiz for Palestine.
No, not those. The other ones, the ones that tried to march into Gaza through Egypt.
Oh, do you remember? There was that Welsh guy fucking... Oh, that was the cringiest...
Yes, and the thing is that they were shocked, genuinely shocked. I mean, they honestly did not know, and they found out the hard way, how the Egyptian authorities treated them.
Yeah.
But you don't understand, we're marching in support of your Muslim brothers. They're like, don't care. You want to go to that shithole and you don't have a license for it, therefore no.
Yeah.
Everyone back into the plane and fuck off back to where you came
so-
from. Yeah, so Egypt deported all of them and prevented them from getting there. That is a very common attitude among the elite / authority of the Arab states. One of my Arab friends who actually works for the Saudi state, let's put it this way, when you meet him for the first time, he has his own yes or no type of questions. And his opening statement always is, democracy may be a good idea, but it's a terrible idea for Arabs. And the idea of having full democracy in the Arab world is retarded nonsense. And if you disagree, then it's like, okay, fine, and you're not going to have a conversation with him at all.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, anyone who believes in democracy for the Arab world is not intelligent enough to speak with me.
So, can we expand on that? Like, why is it mainly religious, or is it the clan side of things?
No, it's the clan side of things primarily, because again, there are other places that have quite a few Muslims that can work democratically, Bosnia being one of them. To a certain extent, Albania, although Albania is no longer majority Muslim.
Tunisia to an extent.
Tunisia to an extent, yes. Even Morocco to an
Indonesia?
extent. Indonesia, yes. So, no, there are
Malaysia,
places.
not so. Malaysia.
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan as well is a very.
But you could never see it in Syria. You wouldn't be able to.
Syria, no. Iraq,
Saudi.
definitely no. Saudi, maybe, but not now. Probably from the Arab states, I guess Saudi would be closer to be.
Right.
I suppose I do expect actually Mohammed bin Salman to try sometime next decade some reforms similar to Jordan, and it would
He's
probably
got quite
work.
a few years on. Because he's quite young, so he's got quite.
Yeah, I expect him to be in power for the next 20 years, and he'll probably try something like Jordan Light, but not this decade again, maybe next decade.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, no. And whether it's, I mean, from this friend of mine thinks that it's the clan side of things. I'm a bit more extremist than him, and I say that it's the whole ethnogenesis of the modern Arab identity, right? Because, you know, when you've had a certain lifestyle for 1,000 years, that becomes an epigenetic legacy.
Yeah.
Which, of course, can be changed, but it cannot be changed in a decade.
No.
It needs a century or so,
Yeah.
right? And since the abolition of the caliphate, which was 100 years ago, there has been no attempts until mid-2010s
Yeah.
to even try to address this issue. Well, now there are some attempts. Okay, see you again in 2100 AD. And maybe then we can have this conversation. And it could actually work. But the expectation that it can work from this year or next year or in 10 years is ridiculous.
Yeah. I was going to say the whole, especially, I was talking mainly the Palestinian thing. It is. I was going to argue it. There's an element of ethnogenesis there. There's also the religious side of things.
Mm-hmm.
The reason the Palestinians do have an opposition to Israel is it kind of goes against I think was it the idea of these Jews. They are the lowest of the low. They are even the Quran says the Jews can't have self-determination because they killed prophets or I can't remember. There's like 5 things that the Jews did, and now, you know, losing to the Jew is this great dishonor and this great shame, and that's still fucked with them for 70-odd years.
To an extent, yes, although I will argue that the Philistines are the lowest of the low of Dar al-Islam, so then again,
Yeah,
because that's sometimes the justification that some of the Arab leaders everywhere else are using is like, yeah, losing to the Jews can be kind of haram, but then again, the lowest of the low lost to the
Yeah.
Jew. Of course they did.
I mean, were they always the lowest of the low? Because it wasn't really a Palestinian
Yes.
identity.
Yes.
Particularly. They were mainly southern Syrian, then British Mandate happens, and then, yeah.
Yes, so that is another thing that the Western left doesn't seem to understand. It's one thing to defend pan-Arabism or the Arab identity, which at the very least has several centuries of existence and whatnot. But when you try to defend the Philistines, you come off as a clown, because the Philistine is the modern Philistine anyway, is a creation of the Soviet Union for the most part. So, it's how I get a lot of times I get into trouble for this, because I always ask, can we see a writing of a Palestinian poet or author or whatever from, I don't know, 1853?
Yeah.
Pick your random year before 1948. Can we see something specifically Palestinian from the 19th century? What currency were they using? What language they were talking?
Yeah.
What
Naming their
differentiated
leaders,
them from?
Yeah.
There isn't, because you can actually find some differences between what is today Saudi Arabia and what is today United Arab Emirates. You can actually find some of those differences, right? Even the type of Arabic that they're using even today is slightly different and whatever. But when it comes to the Palestinians,
it's quite similar to Jordanian and Syrian, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much.
you can even find evidence of a separate Hashemite/Jordanian identity from the 19th century, even earlier than that. But not when it comes to Palestinian.
Yeah.
So, maybe we have a problem. That's probably another aspect that keeps the narrative from advancing. Because, first of all, is the exclusionary thingy. You either agree with us 100% or you support genocide. And the second is, okay, let's try to get an intellectual framework for this. Oh, wait, hold on a second. You guys just popped out of nowhere in 48.
Yeah.
Just because you don't like that you lost.
Yeah.
It's very similar, because, probably one of the reasons why this kind of narrative doesn't catch on in Eastern Europe is because we've seen this playbook, because it's the exact same playbook, because it's the exact same people. We've seen it, in Transnistria, for instance, right, where they maintain that they're a separate identity. Nowadays, 2014 onwards, the Donetsk, the People's Republic, right? Yeah. Or the South Ossetia in what is today Georgia. So we've seen this playbook happen so often that we're less impressed by it. Yeah. Whereas Westerners have not seen this playbook on their own territories anytime recently. No. Although British people should be more accustomed to it, because you guys created Belgium. So,
They also say we created Israel, apparently.
No, I'm sorry, that's our conspiracy. But
it was the British mandate, not the I'm joking.
Yeah, there you go. But no, seriously, I mean, it is this kind of playbook that is...
artificial identities,
Yeah. And again, Palestinian is ultimately, at least in part, a Russian playbook.
Yeah.
A Soviet playbook.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the whole... what was it? Zionism is racism. That was spearheaded by the USSR, and that's still present today. Israel's a supremacist state. It's an ethno-state, which is really ironic because the Palestinian cause is an ethno-nationalistic one. It is incredibly ethno-nationalistic. The quote-unquote indigenous people have a right to get rid of all the quote-unquote settlers, which is really interesting. That's another thing about with Palestinians as well, is how the way they'll use language. So, when I say occupation, you'll think of the West Bank, won't you? You'll think of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank. When they say occupation, they mean Israel itself. That's the occupation. So anytime you see them say the occupation, when you hear them say settler, you will think of the Israeli settlers in the West Bank.
Maybe.
Maybe. What they actually mean is every Israeli. And I think, what's it, Motaz Aziz? He's a pretty famous Palestinian photographer. He was from Gaza, and he was, taking photos. And I'll see if I can, send you a link to his Instagram or whatever. When October 7th happened, he said the Gazans have entered the settlements, and he's referencing Kibbutz, Be'eri, and Reem and those places. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how language has kind of been...
Yeah, manipulation of language has been the bread and butter of the far left for more than 100 years, so this doesn't surprise me in the least bit. Before October 7, you could even make the argument that, hold on a second, how many Jews live in Gaza?
Yeah, they got pulled out in 2005.
Yeah, or whereas how many Arabs live in Israel? So, you know,
20% of
who's the
population.
ethno-nationalist
Yeah.
here? That's one aspect. But after October 7, at least I dropped the argument for the simple reason that I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
In the sense that, look, even if Israel is 101% Jewish, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? If the Gaza enclave could be 103% Arabic and no one cared, then that's fine.
Yeah. Because they'll see Israel as an injustice and part of Western imperialism. That's sort of the mentality, and that needs to be dismantled to these far left, to people on the far left.
Right. But, you know, if Israel is part of Western imperialism, then so is Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, literally the whole thing, it's a Western outpost, a colonial Western artificial creation to benefit Western interests. Yeah, Saudi Arabia, they've been aligned with the West its entire existence.
But especially the last 50 years.
And during the 48 war, because Saudi did send troops, Ibn Saud's justification was they're communists, because Ben Gurion and the early Zionists, the early leaders of Israel...
A lot of them were communists.
They were social communists, yeah. The whole kibbutz thing is a communist socialist idea. And that was his thing. Ibn Saud was pretty weird when he talks about Israel and the Jews. He's like, well, I do support Jewish homeland, and yada yada. He was very flip-floppy in a way. Ibn Saud.
To be fair, the communist accusation was at least in part true.
Yeah.
You know, there is the May Day parade with Stalin pictures in Tel Aviv.
Yeah,
in
I've seen that one.
And
people don't know this because there's a thing with Palestinian propaganda where, from day one the Americans were giving them weapons and arms and all this. Nope, it was the Soviets.
Yep.
The Palestinians and the other Arabs were using Western technology. They were using better technology. There's a book, and I can't remember the name of it. I read it a year ago before I did my trip to Asia, actually on the plane there, and they mentioned that the Arabs were using British Spitfires and such. The Israelis were using passenger planes, those biplanes, and dropping grenades out of them. That was sort of their air force back in the day.
Yeah.
And they said check weapons.
You can see this in the military museum in Tel Aviv. It's not exactly a secret. It's very much part of very open type of history. But when it comes to the United States itself,
their support only happened in the Yom Kippur War.
Yes, and even after, more like after the Yom Kippur War.
It was because
it was pretty controversial before that, and.
I mean, France was their main supplier, and then 67 happened. The day before, they put an arms embargo on them. Literally the day before, and then they were kind of... It's also why... there's another thing people bring up is that Israel was aligned with apartheid South Africa and Taiwan, and the whole thing was, they aligned with apartheid South Africa because they support apartheid and supremacism. It's like, no, it's because they were completely isolated, so they had to find allies. And the only people who were willing to ally with Israel, like on a military full-on basis, was Taiwan and South Africa, the other two pariah states.
Yes, and Taiwan mostly because they saw the Philistines as Soviet aligned, because they were.
Well, yes.
And apartheid South Africa was mostly thinking of some exchange of nuclear technology,
Yes.
let's put it this way.
Taiwan also was involved in that as well.
Yes, so you know there were some very practical reasons for that, and again, the third most important reason that I know will get me into trouble is, well, you were all wrong about apartheid South Africa anyway. So there's that.
I mean, the whole 100-year narrative window is still. I mean, people still think the fall of apartheid was the greatest thing ever. It's like, current day South Africa's not doing too hot.
Yes, and
it's going to get Zimbabwe.
On every single metric, apartheid South Africa was better. On every single metric, from the levels of education of black people, the standard of living, purchase power parity, you name it. On everything, the lower class was far better than 98%.
At least they keep the lights on. They can keep the lights on at least.
Oh yeah, for sure. Blackouts were very rare in apartheid South Africa. Today they're called Tuesday.
Load shedding, the whole thing.
So yeah, there's that. The thing is that this part of history stays forbidden. Well, not
It
forbidden.
is forbidden. Well, it is in the West, pretty much forbidden.
No, not forbidden, but more like obscured, kept in the dark.
Yeah.
Is including in universities. Like I was having this conversation in 2019, I think, in a U.S. university with some of the students, and I was asking them, look, do you know some statistics about how life was under apartheid South Africa? Right, and they were baffled by some of them, and they started checking them. And were like, "Holy shit, that's true!" And I'm like, "Yes, of course it's true. What are you guys studying at the university?" Right. So a lot of these things remain unknown, and as a result, and also a lot of the current thing, like how did South Africa become such a terrible place? Well, affirmative action played a lot of role in it.
Yes, there was a black economic empowerment where I think you have to have 90% of your workforce have to be black if you're over a certain. I think that's the thing. I think it's still in effect, isn't it? I think it was after Mandela actually that got put in.
It's part of the state policy, yes. As a private company, sometimes you can work around it, but as a state enterprise, no. That's why they can't keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Right? Because when something is 90% a certain ethnicity by law, necessarily means that you'll have to hire incompetent people.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
I think the only two countries in Southern Africa that were kind of, Botswana is a really good example because that has a white minority. They're about 5%, I believe. And when Botswana got independence, they didn't just say, let's get rid of the colonial settlers. They thought, well, let's keep them here. And let's keep them here for a while, see what happens, and let's try and build up the economy. And then, because they originally did plan to try and send them back to England. That didn't work out. They're still, the people of English descent are still there, and they're still working the farms and living in Gaborone.
Yeah, but Namibia, same thing. They didn't try to persecute.
Because that was part of South Africa. But
it was, but when this whole decolonization started looking into practice, they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to have that.
Yeah.
They kept the economic union with South Africa. I mean, if you try to withdraw cash from the ATM, they'll give you
a rand,
interchangeable rand and the local dollar, actually.
Yeah.
So if you want to pull it 500 Namibian dollars, it will probably give you half rand and half dollar.
Yeah.
So there's that. But other than that, they stayed away from the political projects. At first, it was unclear whether this would be a good idea or not. But now, looking backward, clearly it was a better idea. Because at the very least you didn't have genocide, which tends to help.
Yeah, I was going to say, because people's opposition now to, or sort of views on apartheid in South Africa, back then and currently, is not based on the fact that it's not based on statistics or living standards. It's based on philosophy. The whole idea of the liberal presuppositions. The blank slate. We're all fundamentally all the same. We all deep down believe the same things, want the same things. If you put a Pakistani in Britain, he'll just be British in a few years.
Some will, most won't.
Yeah, some will. But the whole thing with the blank slate is we're all fundamentally the same, and you'll get the same outcomes if you, and all people must have the exact same rights in all places in all times. But it doesn't really work that way, and it's kind of that's the opposition to apartheid South Africa.
Such a
Israel.
belief would have made some sense in 1820, maybe.
Yeah.
It was the kind of acceptable idealism.
It was pretty recent back then. Was it Kantian?
Yeah, it was a kind of
Rousseauian, I believe. It was
Rousseauian, yes.
Yeah.
The kind of acceptable idealism when you don't have the means to mass test the idea. Even if you feel it might be wrong, you'll be like, okay, but maybe it's true. Or even if it's not, maybe we should strive it as an ideal. But after we had enough time to mass experiment, can we please admit that that was wrong?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the first, some of my favorite examples is, the children of black soldiers that grew up in Germany in the 50s and 60s, compared to in some cases within the same family. One child grew up in the ghetto in the United States, one grew up in Germany.
Yeah.
From the exact same family, right? The exact same genetic combination, and the outcomes are wildly different.
Yeah.
So as a result, can we please admit that we're not the same even when we're pretty damn close?
The same family, yeah. I've got two half sisters, and I don't really speak to them as much. They live quite close to me, but even though there are similarities between me and those two, completely different. Like, for example, I'm into politics, and the older one, Marie, really isn't. She does not understand a lick of it. So it's like it's kind of hard to have a conversation with sometimes.
Well, in
To an
that
extent.
yeah, but in that case, it's not a cultural difference; it's a sex difference.
Not even a sex difference. I mean, even like that side of the family are quite, generally not as. Whereas my mum's side of the family do tend to be more into politics, and I'm kind of an outlier on dad's side, my father's side, I guess you could say.
Right. Let's get to Orientalism, because it has become in itself a philosophy, even though when the word came out, it just meant studying
It meant studying the West.
the Orient, the
Yeah.
East, right? And nowadays it's an entire philosophy, and a very cringe one
Yeah,
to
it's sort
boot,
of more of a pejorative now.
or a pejorative nowadays. What is Orientalism?
So the modern idea of Orientalism comes from a writer called Edward Said, who wrote a book called Orientalism, and it was basically studying how the West constructed this idea of the East as backward, as different, drawing sharp distinctions between the East and the West, and how they would use that to justify colonialism, basically. And basically it was all sort of, you could say, philosophical and sort of critical theory type stuff. Does have a moral message at the end of the day. And the moral message of Edward Said's Orientalism is, if you, as a Westerner, view the East through Western eyes and draw sharp distinctions between the people of the West and the Orient, the East, and mainly the Middle East particularly, that is colonial, racist, and wrong. That is the whole thing. So if I say, the whole thing with the one-state solution, if we were to have that conversation, say, well, democracy doesn't work with the Arabs, that's Orientalist. If you make a distinction between how how women are treated in the Islamic world and the West, that's Orientalist. If you were to say, certain cultural practices are pretty backward, like bachabazi, for example, or honor killings, and draw a sharp distinction between honor killings and domestic violence, for example, that is Orientalist and wrong. I'm not sure how true this is, but I think it's the basis of that idea that all cultures are equal. That is sort of...
It certainly does have that vibe.
Yeah, that's pretty
Right.
much the vibe.
But criticism of Bachabazi, I
Just
just
probably an extreme example, but
No,
it's mainly on women's rights.
I
and
bought a
gay rights.
book from an old Uzbek novelist written in early 1920s, so more than 100 years ago. The guy was killed in a Russian gulag.
Yeah.
And his scathing indictment of Bachabazi makes the far-right Islamo-critic of today sound like a center-left liberal. Right? I mean, the kind of metaphors used and the way he describes some of the practices that were already pretty rare in his time, but they were there.
Yeah.
The way he writes about it, and the guy was a Muslim
Yeah.
and living in Central Asia. Right? He's original from Samarkand, right? Was he an Orientalist?
Yeah, it's like... I think it's mainly through Westerners doing that.
Right.
If someone from the East does it, not as much, but...
Why? Because the way he
Because
describes
the West were generally more... It has a lot to do with power dynamics. The West was generally, back in the days of colonialism, was a lot more on top, so to speak, and did have control over a lot of the Middle East and Dat al-Islam, and for example, so that was where it comes from. But
Right.
Uzbekistan was part of the East, and
part of the Russian Empire.
Russian Empire, yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even then, people consider Russian Empire kind of Western as well. But at the same time, it was someone, who was native of Uzbekistan, who was...
he's more entitled to criticize
I guess so,
Bachabazi
yeah,
than I
Westerner.
am. Right.
Yeah.
Because apparently, raping boys, because that's really what
It literally
Bacha
is.
that's what Bacha is. Systemic rape of boys is suddenly more halal to criticize if you're from Samarkand
Yeah.
than if
And
you're
especially if we were to argue that because Afghanistan has Bachabazi, or had it, the Taliban got rid of it.
usually when the Taliban come into
as a-
power.
If you were to say that's backward, that would be considered Orientalist. You're a Westerner who's using these this presupposition of the East as backward to make that judgment. So that's wrong and immoral.
Yeah, no, I don't use the term backward because it assumes that forward is better,
Yeah.
and I disagree. Most of what the West thinks is progress and
The
forward
word backward
thinking
just
is,
rolls off the tongue better.
yeah, no, I prefer barbaric, evil,
Yeah. But no, there's a whole thing with morality just subjective, bro.
Well,
Cultural,
morality can be subjective.
cultural relativism.
But
Cultures can only be understood how they understood.
Be as open-minded, but not to the extent of your brains falling out, sort of thing.
Yeah, but
So I'm from that kind of school of conservative thought. Yeah, sure, let's be open, but not to the extent of our brains falling out. At some point, there are some limits. I would say that Bakabazi is a very reasonable limit.
Yeah.
That is to say, we can criticize it without being bigots and racists. I think
honor killings.
Yeah, I think systemic mass rape of boys is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Is that really controversial these days?
Yeah.
It is a trade-off or a price that we all pay nowadays, for being too open, effectively. Because it's only, well, not only, but primarily the West that has this thing of self-doubt, self-criticism, being permitted and oftentimes encouraged.
Yeah.
Which, yes, has a lot of advantages, but apparently does have quite a few disadvantages as well.
It can be pretty, you have people who generally view Britain as quite evil. British people who say we're an evil country, we need to, the whole thing with mass immigration is we shouldn't control the borders, we should let them all in because we colonise their countries, therefore we must. I call it the sins of the father fallacy, where, because...
Well, I do agree Britain is an evil country, considering their tax rates.
But I mean, historically, we should accept mass immigration and the people on the boats because we ruin their countries and we must pay the price for it. That's the whole thing.
Right.
Even that includes, violent crime and sexual assault and all the other bits that come with it.
I don't remember Morocco was a British colony.
I think it was French, and the Spanish had a bit of...
That's what I'm remembering, yeah. So why do so many Moroccans have to live in Britain? I mean, even that philosophy doesn't seem to be quite consistent, isn't it? It once again falls trap to the same Russian talking point. In the Russian philosophy, contemporary Russian philosophy, totalitarian philosophy, is the collective West. And it seems that these people have internalized that version of looking at the world. That is to say, well, it's all of us together in Europe.
Yeah.
Right? And
it's mainly to an extent, but also in Britain specifically, because especially in the education system and things, it's all about reversing the whole thing of colonial influences. Is why you have things like decolonize the curriculum and critical studies and all that sort of stuff. So decolonize the curriculum would be like instead of reading about John Steinbeck, you'll try and find a black author or an African author. Instead of with terrorism studies, instead of having a counter-terrorism specialist come in, you'll get a quote-unquote, subaltern from the quote-unquote global south to come in, and their position is going to be, if you do violence to us, that's terrorism. When we do it to you, that's justified. That would be the position, pretty much.
Right. Because, I know some terrorism experts from the quote-unquote global south, but I'm pretty sure those would not be allowed in an English or British university or American university for that matter.
Cancelled,
yeah, because the actual terrorism experts that I know, again, make the far right in Europe sound squeaky little weasels.
To be fair, most of the even moderate right wing across the globe make our right wing look like far leftists.
Yes,
I've always said that it really is. Most of the world is pretty far right.
Yes,
the majority of the world is pretty. The West is quite welcoming to foreigners, and I had this whole thing. I've told the story. Do you think the story from Thailand? The one when I was the first time I went there, I was talking to the hostel owner, having a cigarette, and we noticed one of these tuk-tuks come up and they drop off these tourists to go, and he says, "Go into the shop." The whole tuk-tuk scam. And he mentioned something to me. We'll talk about it, and he mentions another story where it was an Australian guy, and he ends up in a park in Bangkok, and an old Thai guy comes up to him and goes, "Oh, do you want to feed the birds?" And the Australian guy goes, "Yeah, why not?" Starts feeding the birds, finishes up, and the old guy goes, 2,000 baht. What? Yeah, you owe me 2,000 baht. I was like, what the fuck? And then he obviously said no. The Thai guy screamed, went mental. I think he said the Thai word for thief. I believe. And within like 5 seconds, the Australian guy was surrounded. Because in their philosophy, you've upset one of ours and you're a foreigner, so we're going to stick up for...
Yeah.
And the Australian guy got the shit kicked out of him, ended up in hospital, the police were there, and they were going to charge him for instigating it.
Yes.
And the philosophy is, if you weren't here, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah.
It's your fault for being here. Whereas in Britain and the West in general, we don't have that mentality. And that's-
Yeah, we went, or at least you guys went, because in Eastern Europe we're still kind of moderate on this one, but the west part of Europe went from one extreme of being excessively tribalistic, and yes, with a lot of incidents of genuine racism, but went to the other extreme of being
suicidal,
yes,
pathetic.
it's not even xenophilia at this point; it's straight up suicidal.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have my pet theory, or actually hypothesis, because I have failed to demonstrate it in its entirety yet. But I have my pet theory that this is all down to Protestant Germanic thinking, which is we get a set of rules and then we uphold them no matter the consequences, no matter the reality be damned. These are the rules we agreed with. They get to be upheld until the bitter end.
Yeah.
Which is a very wrong way of looking at things, because there are multiple schools of thought all over the world, Western or non-Western, who say, look, it's easier to change the rules than change reality. So when reality disagrees, let's renegotiate the rules. And it's used to be the case in Britain as well. I mean, as a great power, Britain always was less obsessed with rules than other great powers. Precisely for this reason. Sometimes reality disagrees, and where reality disagrees, we renegotiate the rules, but not anymore. Not anymore, to the point of, under the guise of let's smash tribalism, I guess.
Yeah.
Now the push is to be so non-tribalistic as
Be as diverse as possible. I mean, there's the whole thing where there's the whole thing with Britain as a nation of immigrants. There's no distinct British people anymore. We're all just foreign settlers from across the world, and so it's no different than importing thousands of Afghans and Pakistanis.
Right. At least
it's an American. I think it comes from the American.
It is an American idea, yes.
Yeah.
And even in the US, it's a bit weird, but at least it has some
basis
ground in reality. Yeah, some basis
Whereas
in reality.
Britain, we've been very homogenous, pretty much until.
There
was obviously
late 1990s, I would say.
Yeah, actually, late 1990s. We was like 95% white British, but to be fair, that classification's a bit weird. I'm of Irish descent, fully, like both sides of the family. I will still put white British on the census, so it's kind of a...
Yeah.
But then now it's 80% white, and you've got like certain areas, like parts of Bradford, Birmingham, Coventry, in the north, that are literally... I think it's a town called Savile Town, somewhat ironically, that is 90% Muslim. Literally 90% Pakistani Muslim, literally.
The thing is that when you guys moved into that direction, necessarily you got into conflict again with Eastern Europe, because we're like, when... I would want to say scientific racism, but when more excessive Western tribalism was in fashion, we stayed more moderate because, again, in this part of the world, you can't really afford that kind of ethno-nationalism. Yeah. But then you guys moved in the other direction, and we're like, hold on a second, no. Just because everyone settled in here throughout history, and there have been so many battles and so much mix-up, that still doesn't mean
that... It doesn't give the entire right of the entire world to come live here. No.
Yes. So, sure, there have been, Persian merchants who settled here in the 19th century or earlier. Some Arabs here and there, quite a few Turks, quite a few Germans, okay, but that doesn't mean any Somali can move here.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's racist to point that out.
And it's even artificial, because they'll say, well, immigration is just natural. No, it's a policy decision. You can decide who to let in or not. And even they'll say, well, they're claiming asylum. It's just like, well, technically we can waive the right to asylum in theory.
Even in practice, you can reject it.
Yeah, in practice, we could just say, no, you can't. They'll say we're part of the UN Convention on Rights of Refugees, but even that one's funny.
UN, and what army is going to enforce the convention?
Oh, the UN Convention is a little bit, on human rights, is a bit tricky, but...
No, it's not. I mean, we can choose not to observe the most extreme interpretations of it.
Yeah.
And nothing will happen.
I mean,
again, the UN, what army are going to enforce it?
Yeah.
We already tested this in practice during the height of the migrant crisis in 2015, 16, 17, 18. At some point, there was the creation of the Frontex, which is technically the EU's border guard. And the guy who led it until 2019, it's a very interesting story, recently came out. he was a very normie, ordo-liberal, pro-EU kind of guy. Now he's an MEP for Rassemblement National.
Yeah.
So, the most pro-EU guy, pro-federalist guy ever turned into a far-right, not Eurosceptic, but as in EU delenda est.
Yeah.
Because as head of Frontex, he had pressure from the European Commission with the explicit messaging, your job is to welcome in migrants and bus them around. And he's
Yeah.
like, hell no. The purpose of this police force is to, well, repel illegal immigration. And during those times, the Romanian Navy at some point was deployed on the coasts of Greece to assist the Greek border patrol, the coast guard. And the Romanians were like, oh, look, unauthorized boats. Boom. That's it, right? And
Boom.
there was a mini scandal about it, but because here there was no political blowback from it, and even both the public and the politicians were like, "That sounds based."
Yeah, I mean, you would never get that in
I
Britain.
mean, didn't you guys? Because again, Brussels ordered it. Have Romania assist you. They told to Greece, and the Greeks were like, "Well, the EU said this. Okay, fine, we will." But then you called us to do Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Well, what does the Coast Guard is there for? To blow up unauthorized vessels.
Yeah.
It's not a complicated thing. And for a while, the Greeks would then they would shut down the boats as well, but they would blame us because they knew there was no political blowback from that. So we already know, was it that against the UN Convention of Human Rights? I guess.
Yeah.
Did anyone care? No.
I think politically in Britain it would be suicide. I mean, even though we are shifting somewhat to the right, to an extent, I think Reform are very, very popular. We're still very left-wing when it comes to these type of issues. I mean, I think we are starting to shift more towards the right wing, especially with the recent attack in Cambridgeshire, the stabbing attack.
The one with the train.
Yeah, the one on the train. The guy was a black British guy, and people are turning around saying, "Well, he's not British. He's not English. He's just." That's becoming more popular now. And it's really weird. If you had said the word remigration or mass deportations 10 years ago, you would be considered a far-right extremist. Now that is a popular policy among
certain level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can sort of see this, and the left is going mental about it. How we're moving towards the right wing.
Yeah, but then again, if you were to have a global party, because a lot of these leftists are pretty open about the fact that they're globalist, right?
Yeah, just the whole abolish borders.
Well, again, if we were to have a global parliament, it would not look like the UN National Assembly. The winning party, having like 2/3 of the seats, will be somewhere between further right of Javier Milei and much further right than every single right-wing party in Europe when it comes to cultural issues.
Yeah.
Like, I think I told this story multiple times. A friend of mine from Namibia, who considers herself center-left, she did a lot of work on the welfare of prostitutes, human trafficking, gender-based violence, all of that, right? Her opinion about transgenderism is just line them against the wall and shoot. And that's the common sense center-left position in Namibia, right?
In the West, that's extreme far right.
It's so far to the right that most of the far right thinks it's a bit too crazy, right?
Because I'm in a very interesting one because I'm quite economically left wing. Well, not like full-on communism, but like free healthcare, some social housing. I sometimes compare myself to Ben Gurion in a way.
Yeah,
a little bit cringe, but. Because I tend to support having a strong military, supporting NATO, supporting having nukes, I tend to support Ukraine and Israel, but I'm also very right-wing on the immigration issue. I'm now far-right, completely far-right on this thing. That's how kind of...
Well, but then again, that means you agree with your friends on the left on the empire because you guys sold out your empire for cheap aspirin through the NHS. Because that's really what happened, right?
To an extent, there was also that whole idea of liberalism I mentioned earlier, that was the whole adopting, we should just, everyone deserves independence. There was that social element there, but there was also the economic side of we couldn't, keep an empire and have a free healthcare thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so you agree with the dismantlement of the empire because you can't.
At some point, it was going to fall apart anyway.
Yes, but it could have maintained a lot more of of its soft power without, because you can see this in the U.S. with the U.S. maintains an empire without actually having
An empire.
well, no, without having to incorporate every single province of the
Yeah.
empire. And one way to do that is to stay relatively moderate on the public expenses, in a
Yeah.
way that Britain did not.
Yeah, we just went straight for Nimbar, no independence without majority rule, and you know all this, and a lot of our former colonies ended up becoming aligned with the communist bloc. Ghana's a really good example. It was quite funny. I can't remember the leader's name. What's the old leader of Ghana who died in Bucharest?
No, no, I don't remember,
remember his
off the
name.
top of my head.
Off the top of my head, but yeah, he was when when Ghana declared independence, it aligned itself with the communist bloc. There's a few other examples. Zambia, I think, as well did as. I think the only countries that kind of were in the Western Bloc were the former Arab states, Pakistan, Malaysia. It wasn't many of the African ones, bar Nigeria, I think. But most
Yeah,
of them-
Nigeria, Morocco, but
Morocco's French.
Yes, Morocco. I mean, this is another thing that used to be very common when I started learning geopolitics, and nowadays is far-right racism when I say that, look, Northern Africa is basically Southern Europe, because it is. Like in almost every respect, it is. Why? Because it always was
Yeah,
Southern Europe. And if you say this in...
I think Algeria was more Western Europe, if you get the gist.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but
The Pied Noirs.
if you say this in Casablanca, you won't get much disagreement.
Yeah.
Because the economics of Morocco is basically Southern Europe. The labor laws and labor practices are Southern Europe. The buildings are Southern Europe. The trade is Southern Europe. Everything is Southern Europe there. With the exception of the language, which is a mixture of Arabic and French,
Yeah.
which is not exactly Southern Europe. But then again, Malta, we all agree, is part of Europe, and
Yeah.
well, it's very Arabic
Yeah.
in terms of language. Yeah, sure, a papal fiefdom, but
Yeah.
the language is a mixture of Arabic and English. So
Yeah,
but nowadays is racism to point out that a lot of Northern Africa is effectively Southern Europe. By the way, you won't get much disagreement in further south in Africa. So if you say in Ethiopia or in Zimbabwe that North Africa is basically Southern Europe, they'll
It's
agree.
Like, yeah, it's like yeah.
They'll agree.
Yeah.
So there's that. But what do you think about the extremist idea of resettling the Philistines?
The Palestinians.
Yeah.
That is a tricky one because it's logistically. I mean, it's
Logistically, it's actually doable. I mean, the DoD ran the calculus, and they're like,
I
yeah,
mean, the fear is it would absolutely destabilize the other countries. I mean, look what happened in Jordan back in the 1970s, and look at Lebanon.
there was an idea floated by Donald Trump for a short while of resettlement in Libya. The thinking being that Libya is not exactly a stable country anyway. So what exactly would they
Or
destabilize?
sending them to South Sudan. I mean, that would just be. That was I think, an Israeli position.
Yeah, but the logistics to South Sudan is impossible.
Yeah.
But in Libya, it's actually doable.
Yeah.
All you need is some big, beautiful boats and a bit of patience for about a year.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I think. And resettling them from Gaza or from the West Bank and
From Gaza in particular.
Gaza in
yeah.
particular.
It would
Sort of
cost a
torn.
lot,
Yeah, I'm
yes.
torn on the issue who's going to fund it and
But
what would the consequences be, and
yeah, what would the consequences
especially
be
for the was
for everyone else, really?
yeah.
Because it
I
would.
mean, if Israel went forward with it, they'd become a pariah state like that because you know,
No,
you have-
no, obviously it should be made with the geopolitical support of the United States and even logistical support of both Southern Europe and the United States, because the logistics is actually pretty expensive.
Yeah, this is getting
but
cancelled.
doable.
Yeah.
But doable. But what I'm thinking is, what would be the consequences? Because you can get the Libyan leadership to agree with it. In fact, they might like it.
Yeah, no.
But what would be the consequences?
I mean, yeah, I mean, especially if you do end up sometime in the future having someone of Palestinian descent take the helm of Libya. Holy fuck, the Arab-Israeli war's back on, boys. That's literally what would...
That, and also it would be more in Europe's backyard
Yeah.
than in the past. Well, even if we don't take my idea into consideration, which is Northern Africa is South Europe,
Yeah.
but Libya is de facto neighboring Italy, so
Yeah.
it's pretty damn close to home.
Yeah,
in
so
a
that
way.
could cause a few issues as well, especially with, the Palestinians can be pretty mental, not just religiously or politically, I mean, they already have a very anti-Western stance. I mean, I told you the whole thing when I was speaking to Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. You would, a lot of them are very big fans of Russia, and a lot of them really support Russia's invasion of Ukraine because they see it as standing up to Western imperialism, similar to certain parts of the left, actually. And also the whole thing of mentioning that in the Foreign Legion, in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion, you had Israelis. In the Russian Foreign Legion, you had quite a few Palestinians, so mainly from a refugee camp. I use that term loosely because those are not refugee camps.
Yeah.
They're literally, I've been to one of their neighborhoods. They're just regular neighborhoods. But, you know, when you had, you know, that sort of, how would that play out, sort of, with Libya, sort of?
Yeah, lately I've been trying to bounce around these kinds of extremist ideas because at some point we're going to need a policy that tries to seriously not end the conflict but strike more decisively.
Yeah.
So some of the ideas are, you know, from the logistical point of view, maybe resettlement is not a terrible idea, or maybe it is. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Legally, I don't know. Would it help if we all got out of the UN? Because ultimately the UNRWA exists with our funding.
Yeah.
If we fuck off from the UN,
Yeah.
because you know you can never get a majority to just.
I mean, the UN is pretty much just I think you mentioned it before. It's basically just is not only is it a glorified debate society. It just runs cover for all these, you know, third world dictatorships.
Yeah, it's a normative third worldist institution.
And you've reminded me of something as well that I should have probably mentioned earlier. But one of the pro-Palestinian arguments is occupied people have a legal right under international law to resist their oppressors and occupiers. And then you find out it's a UN General Assembly resolution, which is non-binding. And can you guess which country supported it?
Yeah, and who voted against? Yeah.
Yeah, so you could guess it was the USSR, Idi Amin's Uganda, all these horrible dictatorships that, you know, if their people who were oppressed stood up, they'd be very indignant, should we say, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, you know, just like the USSR, which had a technical right to secession, and it was the Lenin's policy on language, which was in the constitution. But then, you know, everyone who agreed with that policy somehow I ended up in a gulag.
Yeah.
And you know that's why it's that meme that the USSR allowed to be criticized once, fucking dies immediately. Because you know that's what people don't realize. The fall of the USSR was actually perfectly legal. It was the logical consequence of the USSR's constitution.
In the West, a lot of leftists will just say, well, it was actually because, I've actually heard the argument, it's because the West wouldn't allow them to trade with them. I shit you not.
USSR was not under trade sanctions. At least not in my lifetime.
They didn't really trade with the... They do trade with the West?
Of course.
They did trade with the West, but like, they say it was the West that did cause the fall when that...
Not
USSR
really. Unless you want to blame the arms race on the West. But then again, nobody forced the USSR to join the arms race.
I think they started, actually.
Yes.
They kicked it off.
Yeah, and then, you know, Reagan be like, okay, showtime.
Yeah.
But nobody forced the Russians to try to compete, and again they were trading with the West. I mean, because that's one of the reasons why there's so many pro-Russians in the German elite.
Yeah.
Because Germany, even at the time, the Federal Republic, West Germany, was running on Russian energy. They've been running on Russian energy for so long. Yeah. And you know, now they don't have to, and they can't, and now suddenly is a problem, right? So then there's that. But going back a little bit to Ireland, is this going to be a common thing for decades, or it's just another uptick of, you know, because every country in the world has had these kinds of moments, you know, the plebs or portions of the elite, or both, just get into a crazy idea for a few years, and then, you know, the reality reasserts itself, and then everyone is embarrassed to having been part of that idea, and then just let's forget about it and just sweep it under the rug. Is this more of the former or more of the latter?
I think it might be, because ever since independence, Ireland has been very much a big supporter of what they consider decolonial movements, even when they supported the Israelis, funnily enough. So I think this could just be a big feature of a sort of Irish political culture, and Irish culture to a lesser degree, but it's also a broader thing with the West as well, we have this big thing with supporting the underdog. That's another article I'm writing. I've got a lot of articles that I still have to. I'll start articles, but as I was saying, the whole thing was supporting the underdog, and you know, you can see it in our culture. Maybe it comes down to, you know, being Christian. You know, Jesus Christ was underdog. You see it in a lot of pop culture thing, like for example, Spider-Man. This is a bit of a weird one, but you know how he's a popular superhero. Peter Parker, the alter ego of Spider-Man, is an underdog. You know, the idea of supporting the underdog is very much a big part of Western culture in general, but Ireland especially. So I think this could be just continuous.
Right. It's one of the many reasons why I prefer the creation of an intermarium with a separate cultural identity. I will never probably see myself as Westerner. This is one of the reasons. Because I'm of the opinion that sometimes the underdog deserves to be an underdog. And it's a good thing to crush the underdog. And supporting strength is not inherently immoral.
Yeah, I had this whole debate where it's like someone actually said, if you want to be on the right side of history, always support the oppressed over the oppressor. Always support the weaker party over the stronger party. And I said, have you read the Batman comics? You know the Joker's the underdog, right? And that their entire argument falls apart. I know you hate it when I bring up pop culture stuff, but it is kind of an important part to understand. And it's really interesting how the Arab world's like the complete opposite. And the other countries are very different to this, or other cultures and civilizations tend to respect strength and respect.
I mean, the Russians are like that.
Yeah.
Right? The Russians basically support strong leadership.
Yeah.
That would be the plebs. And that's why I tell to my pro-Ukrainian friends that, guys, if you want Russia to reform, bring in a different kind of strongman.
Yeah.
And the Russians will fall in line and support that one, because they support strength.
Yeah.
Now, I disagree that always supporting strength is a good thing.
It's on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, and
That's
I also
my
disagree
position.
with the Western view that always supporting the underdog is always a good thing. No, sometimes the underdog deserves to be the underdog, and the strong man is correct, and sometimes, yes, the underdog is the more moral party, and the strong man is a nutcase.
Yeah.
Right?
But also sometimes the reframing of the underdog as well. I mean, a lot of the pro-Palestinian and pro-Russian leftists, they actually tend to support China taking Taiwan. They're in full support. They will see Taiwan as an outpost of Western imperialism in Asia, and they'll consider, you know, it's just China reclaiming their sovereign territory or whatever.
That's insulting even for the Taiwan. I mean, do these people even know anything about the KMT? I mean, the KMT were pretty much strongmen and imperialists on their own, with no input from the West. And you can see this in their behavior subsequent to their loss against the communists, because the reason Taiwan doesn't get any international recognition to this day is precisely because so often they behaved arrogantly.
Does it have more to do with economics? Because if Britain, for example, was to come out and say we recognize Taiwan, China would just cut trade with us.
Yeah, but that's a new thing. But for most of after 1948, mainland China was not the recognized party. It was the KMT, right? The seat of
up until about the 70s.
The 70s, yes. But the main reason they lost it is long before mainland China became a thing economically. Yeah, sure, Deng Xiaoping was already in power. The reforms were starting to happen, but it was still before the Tiananmen disaster. Right? Nothing happened in June in Tiananmen Square, of course.
Nothing happened there,
but the thing is that the elite in Taiwan was excessively arrogant and excessively maximalistic. And that's one of the main reasons why they stopped getting any international support, at least any overt international support. So, you know, and that happened long before any Western influence on the KMT and on Taiwan. So, you know, the leftist view on Taiwan is insulting to both mainland China and the Republic of China and of Taiwan. So there's that. Does this come from illiteracy or overproduction of elites, or where does this come from?
Support the underdog.
But at least do it right.
Yeah.
Because there is this thing that too many countries of the West have been in an overproduction, and we've been doing the same mistake here as well, although the consequences are not that serious yet. There is an overproduction of elites, effectively. Too many people go to college, too many people, as a result, end up thinking that they're more important than they really are. Because there's been a significant drop in quality in elite discourse. shall we put it this way. I mean, you look at how a British lawyer would write 100 years ago,
Yeah.
and compare it with the top tier intellectuals of 2025, and the random low tier lawyer from 100 years ago was a fucking genius compared to these people, right? Even when they're wrong. Like, Ernest Belfort Box, right, who's gained some more recognition these days as a men's rights activist, but the guy was a socialist, right? But when he was writing in 1890 or 1901, 1905 on other issues, even when he was wrong, I'm like, well, if the Labour Party would write like this, it would be less of a despicable entity. So there's a significant drop in quality of discourse on all sides, but on the far left, probably faster than everywhere else. And I don't know why this happened. How it happened, I think it's because of the overproduction of elites. Too many people
That's an extent as well, but also you can argue ideological capture, especially because now I always made the joke that academia and the universities are a circle jerk. Literally.
Sometimes literally, yes.
Literally. Can I mention the story of one of the essays I wrote? I wrote one of the essays I had to write last year. It was titled, "What is a bigger barrier to peace in the Israel-Palestine conflict?" My argument was that the Arab mindset is the biggest barrier. And I used some academic sources. I was encouraged to also use news articles and things of that nature, so I did make that argument. I got a pretty low score on that one, and then some of the feedback was just giving me links to all these pro-Palestinian academics, of which my professor was one, and that's sort of that whole thing. It is this ideological capture of, instead of trying to educate people, it is to push ideological narratives, and that sort of played a part into, instead of encouraging people to think critically, it's more regurgitate these positions, accept these positions.
You don't learn how to think, but what to think.
To an extent,
I already filmed it, but it's not public yet because I haven't got time to edit it, on classicist education, how to get a classicist education, and why you should.
A classist?
Yeah, no, I insist on calling it classicist because classist can be confused with classism, which is a view of disdain to lower classes and whatnot. But no, I think everyone should be getting a classicist education, or classical, if you want.
Classicist,
Because there's an overabundance on what to think, and a deep shortage on how to think.
Yeah.
Right? How do you reach certain conclusions? And that's probably why
there is obviously teaching critical thinking in universities, but not as... there are definitely professors, especially my current professor for my global securities module. He's very intelligent, he does try and teach you how to think and how to come up with ideas and critically analyze things, but some professors do try and regurgitate. But even there was one professor last year who did try and do that. But there are some professors who do try and get you to regurgitate certain stuff.
Yeah, but that's probably why we have so many politicians nowadays, everywhere, really. Even politicians with whom I agree, actually, because this is not an ideological point that I'm making; it's a quality point. It doesn't matter if I agree with the politician or disagree. The way so many politicians reach to a certain conclusion is flawed, and it's clear that they don't understand their own position good enough. And as a result, it creates a cacophony, a kabuki theater of politics. And for that, not just with wider conflicts, but even on this one, specifically the topic of Israel, for that, the fault lies in both bubbles. Right, because and a few years ago I made a video called the 100-year window.
I do reference that.
In that video I did say that at some point we're going to have to renegotiate a lot of things, one of them being the Holocaust. And I did say then, a few years ago, that the anti-Semites can hardly wait for that moment.
Yeah, you could tell they're salivating.
Yes, but they don't realize that when that moment comes, it will also mean renegotiating Arab victimology and all of that. So everyone gets their own revision, right? Yeah. It's not just
We're seeing that already with Rhodesia.
Yeah,
literally. If you said even 5 years ago, maybe Rhodesia wasn't the worst thing in the world, maybe it wasn't an entirely white supremacist, racist apartheid state, which it really wasn't an apartheid state.
It wasn't. Yeah.
No. That you would get laughed, you would be told you're a racist, far-right extremist, but now there are people who genuinely think, Rhodesia, obviously it had issues, but it wasn't, it was far better than we have now. And if we had continued the course, I think at some point we would have had black majority rule and a stable country,
Yeah, because the position of Ian Smith was not we should never have a black majority rule. It's just we should not have black majority rule right now.
Yeah. I got banned off a subreddit for saying this. I said, well, the whole idea was trying to raise the Africans at the time up to the European level of civilization, and I got banned. And the message they sent was, they don't need civilizing. That's very, very paternalistic and very racist, and But now it
can be paternalistic, but is it really racist? I mean, even today, the Zimbabwean workforce is the most educated workforce in the whole region.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that they kept the legal education system the way they inherited from... lucky for everyone, Mugabe was a nerd.
Yeah.
So he did not want decolonizing of the curriculum.
Yeah. We're on that now.
Yeah, so by that standard, Mugabe was far right because because he opposed the decolonization of the curriculum, right? But maybe it was paternalistic, and maybe even it was wrong. But now we've come more to the exclusionary type of thought, and again, you can find this on the right as well. And as we get closer to renegotiating these things, it's probably not a bad idea to recognize some of the flaws of the arguments that are more in favor of our position, let's put it this way. And we mentioned earlier IPAC and ADL, but it's not just those. It's quite a few others. In 2015, I remember making a video in Norway. Someone got fined, I think, for anti-Semitism.
It was the Happy Merchant card?
Yes, and the thing is that the guy who got fined was a Jew.
Yeah.
So at some point, can we renegotiate these things as well, right? We can have happy merchant memes without being anti-Semites. We can disagree with certain Israeli policy without being anti-Semites.
Yeah.
We can agree with the project parking lot without hating all Arabs.
Yeah.
Heck, I know a lot of Arabs who agree with the project.
Especially
some of them happen to be ambassadors of Saudi Arabia, but let's not mention that, right?
It's always the Saudis as well. I had a conversation with a Saudi in Thailand who actually tends to be more pro-Israel, but he's more middle class, and his whole position is, we've had a similar thing in Yemen.
Yep.
That was it. Israel's war in Gaza is pretty much the Saudi intervention in Yemen because they're fighting an Iranian proxy. That's the mentality.
Well, Hezbollah is also an Iranian.
Yeah,
was.
So they've been
after they've checked their pagers.
Yes, which, by the way, people on the pro-Palestinian side still call terrorism. It was an it was indiscriminate, and it killed civilians.
It definitely
killed
was
two
not,
civilians.
It definitely was not indiscriminate.
No,
if anything, it was
violated international law.
No, it didn't. But if anything, the pager operation is probably the most precise
counter-terrorism thing in history.
In history, period. Yes, because why did you have a Hamas pager?
Yes. Well, why? I think there was some innocent people. Like there was a young girl who picked up her dad's pager. But it's like, why are you just leaving your pager lying around? That's a good question.
Yeah. So, but even in that case, the same thing. The fault still lies with the intended target.
Yeah.
For the simple reason that
you're in a terrorist organization.
Yeah. Why were you in a terrorist organization? Period. Yeah. And there was some kerfuffle, some debate about that pager operation because some pagers blew up in embassies.
Yeah. Was it Iran?
Yes.
The Iranian ambassador.
Yes. And
why would you have that? Why do you have a Hezbollah pager?
Yes. So that's one of the many reasons why even when I disagree, and I disagree often with Israeli policy, I'm like, at some point when you're in that neighborhood, you have to do something to stand up for yourself. And at the same time, when you look at the pro-Palestinian side, you're like, guys, you're supporting Iran and Russia. Like,
you've lost already.
No.
You're fucked already. But it's really weird because people will say, a lot of the anti-Israel pro-Palestinian side will go, well, I'm just criticizing Israel. I'm not being anti-Semitic. And then their criticism is, we need to dismantle Israel and it needs to be a one-state solution. And some will say equal rights for all. Some will say get rid of the settlers, and you know what they mean by that, all Israelis. And it's like, it's not really criticism. It's like saying to someone, I hope you die. I hope you die, and I want to make every effort to make sure you die sooner. And saying, bro, I'm just criticizing you. I'm not. That's the same sort of logic, you know.
Right. The whole settler thing. I mean, there are quite a few Arab settlers who are Israeli citizens.
No, when I say settlers, they can. Oh yeah, because.
So do those count?
No, they consider those Arabs the indigenous people, and they consider the.
I have a problem even with the name indigenous. There was recently a map with how much of the new countries are the indigenous still making up, or something like that. And Europe was entirely white, as in non-existent, because there are no indigenous peoples of Europe. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So if
it is literally with academia framing things.
Yeah. So if that's your definition of indigenous, then everything you say is illegitimate ipso facto.
And also the whole idea of their definition of settler colonialism. Well, they consider Israel settler colonial. They consider a settler colonial state. And if you read, there's a guy called Patrick Wolfe, who's one of these scholars on settler colonialism. He wrote an essay on this. And it revolves around eliminating the native and replacing them with a settler population. And it's all about genociding, removing. Yeah, I think Israel's failed at that one, big time. It's like, you know.
During the Gaza war, assuming that we
ratchet up again.
Assuming that this one is currently over, which I don't, because it's basically the same war for so long, but whatever. During the recent flare-up of the Israeli-Gaza conflict, the population of Gaza grew.
Yeah, literally.
Very much literally, yes. So, you know, if Israeli is a genocidal state, then they suck at it.
Yeah, but they'll give other examples of
because during the Rwandan genocide, the population of Rwanda actually dropped.
Yeah.
Right. During the Holodomor, the population of SSR Ukraine dropped.
Yeah.
Right.
Ireland still hasn't got. Well, it's not really. It's still debated whether that's genocide or not. But
right. In Cambodia, the population level
dropped massively.
Yes. Even today, is still slightly smaller population than it was prior to the Khmer Rouge. They'll overcome it in a year or two, but it's still, as we're speaking now, still a bit lower than before the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
So. No, those are, that's a genocide.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if the genocided party has an increase in population, then...
And if the genocide can end if you just hand over the hostages and put down your weapons, is it really?
Yeah, so this is... And of course, I'm pretty much sure that those who create the narrative are fully aware of this.
Yeah.
Those who spread it probably are not.
Because they'll give other examples of why it's a genocide. They'll rip out mangled quotes from Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel, saying it's an entire nation out there, which Zelensky says the same thing about Russians, like the exact same thing. Or they'll take the Bibi quote where he's like, remember Amalek? Or if you actually read the full quote, he's referencing Hamas, not Gazans. He's referencing Hamas. Or they'll mention how Israel has bombed hospitals and residential areas, forgetting to mention that those hospitals and residential areas and schools and whatnot were literally used by Hamas to conduct...
Now, if you mention that, maybe I should also say this. Prior to October 7, the main narrative was that Gaza is an open-air prison.
They still say that.
Right.
Or a concentration camp.
Right. It's interesting that how many hospitals the concentration had and how many schools the concentration camp has. So,
and 5-star hotels.
And 5-star hotel.
Fine dining.
Quite a lot of 5-star hotels.
And car dealerships.
Yeah, because you haven't been, but I have been to Gaza before October 7, obviously.
When was that? Was that 2018? Or?
No, earlier, more like 2014 or 15. Yeah. And, it had a lot of problems, but being a concentration camp wasn't one.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way.
And the per capita income, or it was sort of middle...
Yeah, it was a middle income area, let's put it this way, by Middle East standards, which means it wasn't exactly poor.
It was
poorer
than Jordan, maybe. It wouldn't be on Jordan's level.
Jordan, but not the capital city or Aqaba. No, think of a more middle city of Jordan, something like that.
Yeah.
So not bad, not great, not terrible.
Yeah, not great, not terrible.
Yeah, but for a concentration camp, I would say was overperforming.
They'll say they're a captive people because Israel sieges them and they don't let them. They control the sea and the air. It's like, yeah, look at Egypt's border with Gaza. Like how fucking huge. I mean, Donald Trump would love 2016. Donald Trump would just absolutely blush over it. That's a great wall, the best wall ever.
It's the best wall that ever walled. Yes,
it's literally 6 fucking gates, and it's like.
Yes, but the thing is that Egypt lost a lot in its conflicts with Israel. One thing they'll never sorry for is losing Gaza.
Literally, I think during the 1978 Camp David thing, Menachem Begin was like, "Do you want Gaza back?"
Hell no.
Nah, you can have that one.
Yeah, because that is the great secret, which is not a secret at all. It's very much open secret. Every single elite in the Muslim world, especially in the Middle East, when you catch them without cameras rolling, they're all saying, "No, fuck that place." They just no.
It is literally, and it is. If you want to see what a free Palestine would look like, or a one-state solution, that is what it would look like, literally. And it was I can't remember who said it. It was, there is a Gazan guy who is more pro-Israel. He still has criticism, but he generally leans more towards the pro-Israel side. And he said Gaza was becoming more and more Islamist by the year. He tells a story where, one of his friends goes to meet a female friend of his, and one of the Hamas secret police spot them and go, "Oh, are you married, or is he your brother?" And then they say, "No, we're just friends." He says, and he says to the woman, "I'd be ashamed if my sister was being a whore like you are, meeting, and I'm meeting, this man." He says, "Well, if I catch you two again, well," that was literally before, I think 2 years before October 7th. It was becoming more and more.
Yeah, no, I can believe that. The thing is that kind of thing is haram even in most of the Muslim world. I mean, if you try to do this in Uzbekistan, you get boiled alive.
Yeah, but
if you try to do this in Kyrgyzstan, you'll be arrested. No, first for the first offense, only some beatings. The second time you get
just some beatings, just some casual.
Yeah, quite a lot of beatings actually.
Yeah.
Beatings are a very common form of punishment in Central Asia for obvious reasons.
I'm guessing their motto is the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yes, they still believe correctly, in my opinion, that a big stick controls and upholds, builds and upholds civilization. And they're not wrong. In Kazakhstan, you'll be just laughed off because it would be so weird to say this to begin with. In Tajikistan, you would be arrested. No, seriously. I mean, Tajikistan has the harshest policies when it comes to Islamist manifestation and expression.
Uzbekistan was pretty.
Uzbekistan is pretty harsh as well, but
not as harsh as it used to be, I imagine.
Yes, but Tajikistan, because it has a more porous border with Afghanistan, ever since the Taliban are back in power, they become a lot more paranoid about Islamism. And I understand why. Having been to that border just a month ago, I understand why. I mean, there's so many crazy people showing up in Tajikistan for trade, admittedly. I mean,
trade.
Yeah, no, seriously, they buy stuff and they fuck off back to Afghanistan. So, they're not sticking around. But, if you stop and have a conversation, most of them are straight up crazy people.
Yeah, it's just like, back away slowly, just deal with the trade and go,
Yeah, no, I mean, they try to abstain themselves while they are in Tajikistan, so you can talk to them, but, if you go into any controversial topic, they'll casually say things that you're like, Jesus Christ, these people need to be in a mental hospital, right? Like, for instance, one guy in a market in southern Tajikistan was like, well, I'm trying to to keep my stay here as short as possible because this society is turning absolutely haram. And I'm like, why? Well, because, shit like this would never be tolerated in a proper Muslim country, and it was a babushka smoking. And I'm like, well, maybe Tajikistan shouldn't be tolerating you. Because, what could he do? Because there was plenty of...
was it the fact it was smoking or the fact it was uncovered?
Probably both, I guess. But although, to be fair, there aren't that many uncovered women during daytime in Tajikistan because the sun there can literally kill you. So it's a good idea to...
It's not hot.
No, not just because... Well, first of all, it's hot. The second of all is 3,000 meters altitude. That's excessive risk of skin cancer and all sorts of fucked up shit. So going out uncovered is really a bad idea. Not for religious reasons, but for climate reasons. Anyway, during nighttime, different story, of course. So I was like, maybe Tajikistan shouldn't be tolerating you. And, he got really annoyed, but, what can you do? There's full of police everywhere, because everywhere Afghans are, there's a lot of police. And, the guys that overheard the conversation laughed out loud, and it's like, that's probably not a terrible idea. But, you can feel the tension. The closer you get to the border with Afghanistan, you feel the tension.
We imported a lot of Afghans, with the migrant thing, and the consequences have been pretty interesting.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying that this kind of thing with, secret morality police, and which I know Hamas has tried quite a lot, are actually quite haram even in
The
Muslim
world,
countries. Yeah, even in Indonesia, if you take the most Islamist or most faithful province of Indonesia, even there they don't
Is it
do
in
that.
Aceh? Is it?
Yes,
Aceh, no.
even there they don't go that far away, that far, and they're officially an Islamic province of Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
And even there they don't go that far away. Do this in Turkey, same thing. You would be laughed out of the room, right?
Saudi?
Saudi, probably not being laughed out, but also kind of ignored.
Yeah, because they have been becoming a lot more modern as
Yeah, the thing is that
women can drive now.
Mohammed bin Salman has been lucky enough to be able to frame all of this as a return to tradition, because the thing is that a lot of crazy shit that you've seen in Saudi until about 2010 or so was actually quite new.
Yeah.
All of that, the sex
whole-
segregation and all of that, it's actually new. It's after 1970. So, Mohammed bin Salman was very easy to, had an easy job of framing this as an ultra-conservative policy, which is, let's get back to the 70s, that would be the 1870s, when we weren't doing this shit.
Yeah.
So it was easy for him. But yeah, no, in Saudi you wouldn't be laughed out, but you would be considered a relic of a past that should not come back.
Yeah.
So, it's another thing that... and here I get into conflict with both the left and the right, because the right in Europe has a very distorted image of what
You could say Orientalist image of
not even
or
or-
neo-Orientalist.
not even neo-Orientalist, just straight up distorted. A lot of the both good things and bad things about the Muslim world that the right believes are distorted or straight up wrong, or they are true, but they are true only in a certain minute context and not generalized for the whole, because the Muslim world is actually pretty big territorially. It goes from the far west of Morocco and all the way to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That's a lot of diversity
Or
in
even
there.
Malaysia and
Yeah, well, Malaysia is a very interesting place because
it actually is a full-on apartheid state.
Yes.
It has ethnic laws. It
Yes.
has laws designed to benefit the Malay Muslim population.
Yes.
Like universities have to have a 90%. Certain jobs have to have this, and if you're a Chinese citizen of Malaysia or Indian citizen of Malaysia, get fucked really.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of the left criticizing the imperialist settler colonialist project called Malaysia.
No, or Singapore.
Or Singapore, yeah, which is a Chinese,
Yeah,
Chinese dissident colonialist project, but
Yeah.
whatever. Singapore, same thing. Although Singapore doesn't have specifically ethnic rules, but the body of law is built in such a way that it inherently advantages the Chinese
ironically
population.
does have sort of, if you do want to have a multicultural society, a full-on, in the same way some of the leftists kind of want.
It has to be Singapore style.
You would have to have a Singapore-style hate speech law, Singapore-style, forced mixing laws and all sorts of stuff.
Yes, because I remember there is that famous quote from the founding prime minister.
Lee Kuan Yew.
Yeah, who's like, well, we have to abolish the jury trials because otherwise it's just an ethnic count.
Yeah.
And
I think there was something about democracy as well.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing that already in the West with, we want the Gaza independence, literally the election was just, right, which areas are, the areas that voted reform are, somewhat majority white, and the areas that vote Labour or were, mixed, and the places that voted for the Gaza independence, bar Coventry South, which is where Zara Sultan is from, they all vote, they're all majority Muslim, so.
Yeah, that's another thing that you don't see, for instance, in Turkey. Like in Turkey, even today with the AKP, which is Erdogan's party, becoming a little bit more Islamist, even now you don't see this. Like the AKP would get similar percentages in the very Muslim areas and in the areas where there's
like
predominantly Kemalist or secular.
Yeah.
Right? It's still an ideological vote and not an identity vote. That's why I'm saying that the West imported the worst people from Dar al-Islam, because a lot of these behaviors either straight up don't exist in Dar al-Islam, or they do, but they're marginalized, and considered, if not haram, at the very least weird, and sometimes actively punished, like in Uzbekistan, where you get boiled alive for some of this shit. Because, Ayan Hirsi Ali has this when she describes her... exodus from Somalia, I think, and she ends up in Bosnia, and on the Wikipedia page said Bosnia is a majority Muslim place and whatever, But then, she goes out in the city and, you can see someone in a full burqa and someone in a bikini and they're having a cigarette outside.
Yeah,
It's like, what the fuck is this? This makes no sense. Oh, yes, it does. But, it says here that it's a Muslim country. Well, it kind of, I guess.
Yeah,
And? Or a conversation that I was witness of. I was with an Albanian friend. And he had in some of these exchange programs, whatever, university exchange programs, and he had a guest from Algeria, and we were walking in the downtown of Tirana, and there is a old Persian mosque there. At the time, it wasn't shut down because now it's shut down because it's under reparations, restoration, whatever. It's a historical mosque. It's beautiful, actually. And he asks, "Well, is that mosque active?" And the Albanian friend's like, "Yes, it is."
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of mosque is it? Shia? Is it Sunni? He's like, I have no idea. And he's like, "Well, but you said you're a Muslim." Yeah, I guess I'm a Muslim.
Yeah,
I mean, my dad was a Muslim, but who knows?
It's interesting. You reminded me of something as well, where it's like there was Tommy Robinson. Yeah, everyone knows Tommy Robinson.
Not a big fan.
You're not big. Yeah,
No.
I'm a bit torn on him. But he went to Israel recently, and he spoke to an imam who was from Leicester or Nottingham actually, and when he asked about the Israel-Palestine conflict, can I borrow a cigarette? The guy said, well, I support a two-state solution. I think all people should have the right to thing here. And he also did criticize the Pakistani Muslim community because this particular imam was an Indian Muslim. Yeah, he ended up getting sacked. He ended up getting removed from his position, and he ended up getting a lot of hate for supporting a two-state solution, which is insane, or having criticism of certain parts of the Muslim community, which is...
Yeah, so basically he got punished for being a moderate Muslim. Okay. I'm not surprised. Once again, somehow you guys ended up importing the worst people of Dar al-Islam combined to the worst people of the far left.
Yeah.
And that kind of forms the governing coalition.
Yeah. Not the current, but there is definitely elements of
it. Yeah. The thing is that this doesn't end well.
For leftists.
For leftists, primarily.
Yeah. I'll go about that.
A friendly reminder, it was the far left that supported the Iranian Revolution. And, most of the original supporters are either dead or living in Sweden. And the reason for that is not because they wanted to.
Yeah.
So then there's that. So you're saying that this will continue for quite a long time.
Yeah. Not just in Ireland, but in, the whole... Yeah, it'll continue for pretty... I think... I've mentioned this before, but I do think at some point, the post-colonial left do have to be dealt with. It's a big issue mainly in Britain and America because they are subversive and they are anti-Western subversive. So, but if those people continue to have influence and continue to influence the next generation and yada, 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 you will... I mean, I've always sometimes joked that we are in a second Cold War. Mm-hmm. And would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. If you're ideologically captured, if you view your own country as this evil imperialist power which must be dismantled, and then you've got China and Russia on the other side saying, we're right, we have a lot of, self-confidence, you're going to lose. And the consequences of that, God knows,
The funny thing is that, again, going back to a lot of the inconsistencies, because, at least, there were Soviet supporters in the US in the 20s and 30s, including of the Stalinist purges and whatnot. But, at least they would put their money where their mouth was. That is to say, some of them actually moved to the USSR to live in the Soviet paradise. Of course, a lot of them ended up in the Gulag, but some of them didn't, to be fair. Some of them didn't. Quite a lot of black people actually moved to the USSR. Because, look, the USSR is an anti-racist country.
Yeah, that was literally the whole thing.
Yes, and very few of them stuck around. A lot of them realized that it's probably to get back into the segregationist South.
Yeah.
So then there's that. But at least they tried.
Yeah.
They tried to be consistent. They tried to test their ideas.
Yeah.
Now that reflex just straight up disappeared on the far left. Because, we support China against the West, but we also support Palestine. Well, have you noticed how China treats its Muslims?
Yeah.
Even its moderate Muslims.
Yeah, right? They're in camps.
Yeah, I know. I have
Or even-
every time I go to Central Asia, I end up talking with some people who are
Uyghurs.
either they themselves manage to get away from there by using some various forms of lawfare, which at least is still possible in China, or they have relatives or friends who are
Yeah.
still in the concentration camps in Uyghuristan or Xinjiang.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's far more subversive, and probably that's why it's more successful. The current form of post-colonial left than 100 years ago or 70 years ago, because they don't even try to be consistent. They don't even try to
Yeah.
promote
Queers for Palestine.
yeah.
That whole thing, where you'll see protesters chanting, "One struggle, one fight, Palestine, trans rights."
One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights. One struggle, one fight. One struggle, one fight. One struggle, one fight. One struggle, one fight.
So I'm like, yeah, those things are pretty diametrically opposed.
Well, I guess
mean,
when
you
you-
think the Palestinians hate the Jews? Holy shit! Ask them about
yeah.
the LGBT community. It's like,
Yes,
it's
especially
haram.
transgenders.
Especially, I thought it was more gay men, particularly.
Well, it depends. If you ask in Iran, then it's more gay men. But if you ask in the rest of the Arab world, they actually view transgenders with more contempt, and for obvious reasons. Because in Shia Islam, there is that fatwa that says transgenderism is halal. Therefore, Iran actually has progressive laws on transgenderism long before the West had them.
Yeah.
And practices as well. I mean, they subsidize the care and whatnot. Of course, the quality of it is utter shit.
Questionable, to say the least.
But nevertheless, but in Sunni Islam, generally speaking, is homosexuality is relative. Like for instance, in Morocco, you actually have well, how should I say this? That doesn't sound like porn, but you basically have female brothels.
I'm not
Let's
even
put it this
surprised.
way.
I'm not even.
Yeah, it's in Morocco and Turkey. There are two places in Dar al-Islam that have this. Actually, in Istanbul, there's an entire neighborhood of that, but let's not talk about that. And in Turkey, is mostly justified from a very secular perspective. There is that right to be degenerate, and if you're not, if you're degenerate in your own corner, then knock yourself out. But in Morocco, it actually has partial religious justification. That is to say, the king says so, and the king is the representative of Allah in our country. And it says that, as long as you believe that he's a woman, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Mind over matter.
I'm totally not joking. So, but when it comes to Palestine, yes. Well, how about no?
I actually met someone in Tel Aviv who was a gay Palestinian, and he's like, I had to leave because
Yes.
he didn't even kiss a boy or anything. They just found out he was gay, and they were really ready to. His family were ready to literally, should we say, kill him? Yeah, because to them he was completely haram. It's completely
Yes, and that will not change anytime soon. But there is on that. I guess I agree with pretty much everyone. But then I get into conflict with everyone when I say I'm not sure it should change, because
I don't care if it changes. It's just the inconsistency that really gets me.
right. Because
And if you bring up that Israel is the only, well, not the only. I mean, Jordan's can be pretty lenient to an extent in certain places.
You can be a homosexual in Jordan, that's fine, but you will never get a pride parade, that's for sure.
Whereas in Israel, if you bring up that Israel actually is the most gay-friendly place in the Middle East, and I think
Probably
actually
yes, yeah.
among them in the world. I mean, Tel Aviv's gay pride parade is one of the biggest in the world.
Tel Aviv is a gay race communist shithole, so of course.
It has its good parts. I mean, Tel Aviv has its decent, but
It has its good parts, like the railway station. You can fuck off from there pretty fast. You don't have to stick around.
But if you bring that up, you'll get accused of one of two things. Being Orientalist, as I said earlier, or you'll get accused of pinkwashing, which is a new one they have.
Right.
Which is basically you're washing away the atrocities of the Israeli state and the Israeli apartheid settler colonial state by mentioning that, if the Palestinians had their way, there'd be no gay rights. That's
Right, I love that meme with, queers for Palestine, queers in Palestine, hanging out in the West, hanging out in Iran.
Yeah, chickens for KFC, cows for McDonald's.
Yeah, and getting, what was it called? Getting high in the West and getting high in Palestine.
Yeah, it was like that's that funny thing with Bibi where when he addresses the U.S. Congress saying they've got queries for Palestine. Well, that's what we chickens for KFC, you know.
Yes, yeah, it is in a sense a chicken for KFC. The thing is that the reason the left adopted this version is not for consistency, obviously, but more for as a power struggle because they needed a way to expand the coalition, and this can work.
The Omnicores, as it's called sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You've seen the Venn diagram where it's like Palestine links us all, and it's like, what's it, patriarchy, toxic masculinity, the environment, and I'm just like, I'm looking at that graph. I'll see if we can put a picture of it when this video gets edited. I'll try and find the picture of it, but it's. I'm just looking at it thinking, what in the fuck are they? But yeah, you realize it is part of that anti-Western.
Yes, it's something that
liberation struggle.
They drew, I suppose, from Marcuse, who.
Oh yeah, I was saying that was the whole.
The issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution.
Yeah, that was the whole Marcusean thing. So I'm actually reading. It's in one dimensional.
Regressive tolerance. That's how they regressive tolerance.
Yeah, it's basically the whole, because the working classes in the West have become more
too bourgeois.
They've become too bourgeois, too more ingratiated with the system. So instead of trying to get the revolution from them, you focus on the outcasts of society, the homeless, the drug addicts, trans people, gay people, Muslims, all sorts, and then that's how you bring about the revolution,
Yeah, which is another reason why this doesn't work in Eastern Europe, because here, if you look
through.
Yeah, no, if you go with the outcasts might be even further to the right, quote unquote, than the mainstream.
Yeah,
like there was recently a few weeks ago there was an online conference on gypsy rights, and there was one or two Westoids and three leaders of gypsy communities, one from here, one from Bulgaria, and one I think from Slovakia or whatever. And at some point the LGBT topic came up, and the gypsies sounded much more further to the right than I am, and I'm pretty much on the far right.
They're having that as well with your party thing. I mean, the Gaza Independents. I mean, Zara Sultana's like, I support and Jeremy Corbyn like, we support trans rights and the LGBT stuff, and then Adnan Hussein, who's one of the Gaza Independents, he's like, yeah, no. Literally, and it caused a bit of a rift between them. It's like, yeah, you can see the Islamo left coalition there breaking apart. It's just like in real time, and it's like, I could have told you this.
This is what's admirable about figures like admirable in the very technocratic sense. In a moral sense, it's terrible, but in a technocratic sense, it's admirable. Zohran Mamdami, right? He's so well integrated into the American left that he can hold both positions at the same time without any political blowback.
Yeah,
either from the right or from his own party.
Yeah,
it's quite admirable. I mean, those kinds of figures would have been unimaginable 100 years ago. So no, it really is the clown world when it comes to politics.
Honk.
It is an absolute honk. And so if Zohran Mamdami ends up being
he probably will
mayor, and he likely will, yes. It will be the first clown mayor of New York.
It's going to be a shambles.
It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to have a lot of fun because I don't live in New York. If I
might visit New York at some point, hopefully, but I'll just.
You should hurry up, because if that guy stays mayor and starts enacting his agenda, he'll probably visit a ghost town.
Yeah, especially the Jews will be the first to leave. I mean,
not really. I mean, the Satmar Jews actually probably will vote for him.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that the right or the GOP or the Zionists, whatever, miscalculated. They were banking that, come on, the Jews of New York will not vote for this guy, and they will be wrong.
Yeah,
they will.
It is an observation I've noticed about American Jews versus, I would say, British Jews and Israeli Jews is American Jews do tend to be quite, well, not all of them, but there is a contingent that's quite liberal, anti-Zionist, very, very left-leaning. I've spoken to a lot of British Jews, and they're very, very right-wing on a lot of issues, especially Israel. They're obviously very, very pro-Israel, understandably. But then also when it comes to like mass immigration in Islam, they're also like, all the anti-Semitic attacks I've had are not from the quote-unquote far right. They have been from Muslims and the far left. I mean, they'll just be like, especially they're just walking around with a kippah, they'll have some Screecher go, "Free Palestine" at them, that sort of thing.
Yeah, in France, for instance, the Jewish vote is almost always for Rassemblement National, for the far right. Also the homosexual vote.
Yes,
Yeah, the homosexual men all vote for the far right,
yeah,
whereas lesbian women vote for the far left.
which is pretty.
Yeah, which is to be expected again.
Yeah.
But in New York specifically, I mean, people don't, and anti-Semites in general, whether they are just criticizing Israel or very honest anti-Semites, doesn't really matter. What they don't understand is that Jewry is not a unified thing either.
No,
That joke, which is actually not a joke, which is, ask two Jews about things and you'll get three opinions.
Yeah.
It's actually true. There's a lot of diversity of opinion within the Jewry, much wider than in other communities.
And even within Israel as well.
Of course.
'Cause
That's why their politics is so fucked up.
Yes. This really surprised me because I was in Tel Aviv and a friend of mine, she's called Ellie. She's quite left-leaning on most issues, but when the Israel-Palestine conflict, she's very, very, very pro-Israel,
obviously.
Understandably. And when I went to Jerusalem, I met a born and bred Israeli who was very anti-Zionist and wanted a one-state solution. I'm just looking at him like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no,
Are you insane?
doesn't surprise me at all. Again, you look at the way the Knesset looks like by factions, and there's so many parties, and there's so much difference between them, and so much diversity of opinion. That's just the way Jewish politics works. And the reason it works like that is because, well, the electorate is majority Jewish, so of course it's gonna. Yeah, so that's where the.
I mean, you have Arabs who vote
for Zionist parties, yes.
Likud,
Yes, yes.
I've met a few of them actually.
Yeah, no, I know a few Arabs who are members of Likud.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more complicated. But the other way around is true as well. Like everyone betted that the Jews in New York will not vote for Zohran Mamdami for reasons of the fact that the guy is an anti-Semite. And I'm like, no, you're probably wrong. A lot of Jews will vote for Zohran Mamdami. And turns out I was right.
Yeah, that was quite.
And the reason I'm right is not because I'm some genius, but because I know the Jews of New York.
Yeah.
And a lot of Jews of New York are Satmar Jews.
Yeah.
Satmar is a city in Romania, about 150 kilometers from here.
Satmar, I think that's on the.
Satmar on the northwest.
It's right near sort of not the border with Ukraine.
Yes, it is actually near the border of both Ukraine
We
and
went
Hungary.
past that last time.
No. No, we weren't. We went closer to Baia not Satu-Mare.
Yeah.
Anyway, Satu-Mare or Satmar is the place where a significant subsect of Judaism was born, and they're still called to this day Satmar Jews. And those tend to be either indifferent or anti-Zionist.
Yeah.
Usually for religious reasons. They have their own interpretation of the religious texts and whatnot, which is this conversation that I'm not prepared to have for the simple reason that I don't care.
Yeah, we hear all day,
But the thing is that if you ask them to vote specifically on this issue, they will vote anti-Zionist. If you ask them to vote on economic issues, they will vote on the far right every single time.
Yeah.
And everyone took the bait of framing the election in New York on Zionist and anti-Zionism. Well, good luck, you just lost the Jewish vote. Well, the majority of it, not all of it. Of course, the bankers will vote for either Curtis Silva or Cuomo. But the Satmar Jews, which are 60 or 70% of the Jews in New York, they will vote for Mamdami or not vote at all.
Yeah.
Because you forced the conversation to be on that.
Yeah. Which is the thing. This is like a thing with modern Western thing. It is just the obsession with Israel. It is just so, and I think I'm guilty of going into that. I think maybe it's just a mental thing of just being pushed into that whole. When people say, well, if you.
How do we get out from this?
That's a good question. How do we get out from it? I mean, because even though there's a ceasefire, they're still out there protesting. They still have the protest, and it's pretty much a mask off moment. Because I think most people. I think we will just have to, what's it called, let it run its course, because eventually people get bored. They're already kind of moving on to Sudan now. They're already obsessed with, that's the new obsession. Everyone's talking about the current thing in Sudan, and the UAE supporting the RSF, and yeah, that's going to be the new one.
Yeah, so we should expect to get more experts on Sudanese politics.
Yes,
later.
Or the UAE now, and
or UAE. Yeah, it's always funny because when everyone became an expert in Ukrainian politics, I had a lot of fun for several years now, because I've been to every single oblast of Ukraine. like every single oblast of
I
Ukraine.
imagine there's some of them before.
Yes, because I've been taking regular trips to Ukraine since 2003, I think.
Yeah,
So some of the people watching this weren't even born when I started
Yeah,
taking regular trips to Ukraine.
I was 4 years old when.
Yeah, there you go. So as a result, when I see someone is like, they're 21 in the university somewhere about 5,000 or 10,000 kilometers away, trying to explain to me the geopolitics of Ukraine, I'm like, bitch, please, bitch, please. It doesn't matter whether they agree with me or not.
Because I've only really been into the Ukraine thing since. Well, I have had a fascination with Ukraine since 2013, 14, 15, around about that time, but really understanding it's been a more recent thing, really. A more recent thing for me. But yeah, I'm still learning as well,
So every time this new current thing shows up, you get a lot more of these experts. But the thing is that even if you're right and everyone is moving on to becoming a Sudanese expert, we're still stuck with a significant, not a majority, maybe even not a significant minority, but a minority loud enough of the population who's made concern about Israel, whether against or for, their whole personality.
And their obsession with politics. I've talked about Israel a lot, and I'm pretty. I wouldn't call myself an expert. I sometimes joke that I'm FA's Freedom Alternatives local Israeli expert, but I'm not really.
Well, I mean, considering that in some of our circles there are actually Israeli politicians, and those people don't talk about Israel as much as so many of these activists, and sure, a lot of it is social contagion.
Part of it is.
A lot of it is social contagion. Like, for instance, there was at some point, I think it was here, not in Cluj, in Bucharest. Here they tried and they failed, but in Bucharest they succeeded. Occupy the university and all of that shit. And, I sent a friend of mine, can you go there and take a few pictures? I'm curious about the demographics of I was thinking first, maybe it's the Arab students.
Yeah.
There are quite a few Arab students in Romania. No. There weren't that many Arab students, like one. No, most were locals. And
yeah, I think I've seen some of the...
Yeah, and turns out that it was quite a lot of it was a social contagion once you started asking them, okay, hold on a second, what river and what sea?
Yeah.
Let's start from there.
Yeah.
Let's start with the basic. What river and what sea?
Yeah.
And, half would just fold immediately. Like, I don't know, man, I'm here to get laid. Okay.
There's that
Fair
meme
enough.
where it's like... when the fine pro-Palestine shit finds my playlist or something,
No, the thing is that the reason I'm mentioning this is because at some point there was also a mask-off moment. I think it was in New York, somewhere in the U.S. anyway. In one of the pro-Palestine Occupy the University protests, whatever, they actually had an explicit rule of not getting laid at the protest. So it was probably so common.
I wonder how they framed it. Was it like a sex strike or something?
I don't remember, but I can pull up the article for sure, and you can read it. But they actually had an explicit rule against getting laid at the protest. So the reason I'm mentioning all of this is because a lot of the people on the pro-Israeli side are taking it a bit too seriously.
I could be guilty of this too sometimes.
Because, it's kids being kids.
Yeah.
With the risk of sounding like an old geezer here, it's kids being kids. And I know this because, I went to protests that I didn't particularly care about. Okay, not that extremist, but still, mostly as a tool of, okay, let's get to meet some new people. Let's see what happens, right? And it's a lot of that. And if you're a student in a Western university where far-left politics is normative, well, even if you're not far left yourself, if you're gonna socialize, one of the few mass socialization opportunities
is a protest.
Are protests, which tend to be overwhelmingly far
they
left.
are starting to die down a bit. Like my university, I think we recently had a big. They were trying to organise a big strike. It wasn't a strike. It was some big demonstration outside the conference centre for the university. About maybe 15 people at most turned up.
Mm-hmm.
And they were laughed at, basically. But even then, in public opinion, I think some people have this sort of wanting to be part of something.
Mm-hmm.
And there are still old leftists whose point of pride, whose one, thing that they can be proud of is they helped bring about the end of apartheid South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this thing, and I think where some people do consider Israel, as mentioned before, is the South Africa of our time. So they see themselves as being part of changing history or whatever, or being part of history. This whole idea of feeling self-important, I think, is a little bit of a part of it. But it still is somewhat concerning,
No, I'm not saying it's not concerning.
Because even people who don't go to protests, still have those opinions.
Sure.
And those people are going to be the next generation. And you've seen the stats where Israel's reputation is in the shitter. It dropped massively, especially among my age group. So.
Yes, but I'm pretty much against the suppositions that come as derived from those stats. Like, for instance, I think The Economist had an article that explained it really well. It's called "Israel is far more popular than you think." That is to say, yes, these people are very noisy, especially online and in some universities, but just zoom out a little bit and touch a little bit of grass and suddenly,
Yeah, I think it's maybe it was a pretty interesting moment where, because most of my circle is into politics, both in university, freedom alternative. When I went to see some of my cousins, this was back in June, because I mentioned to a few people I've travelled to Israel, and someone actually said, it's very unethical. It's like visiting apartheid South Africa, and it's and you're enjoying the Tel Aviv beach while so many miles away kids are starving and babies are being killed. That's a new talking point. But when I visit my cousin, just like, holy shit, went to Israel. Holy fuck, how was it? I would love to go. I don't want to get bombed by the Houthis though, and and even then, because I've got a cousin called Emily who's she's not. I think she's quite pro-feminist, so you might have a. But her whole thing is, I wouldn't say she's a big Israel supporter. She doesn't really care as much, but she does lean a little bit on their side of things to an extent. But she's like, she wasn't rabid or, like some of these other...
Yeah, it's a lot of... I perceive it as one of those really neurotic topics. And because your generation is far more neurotic than mine, very self-conscious, very much concerned with what strangers think, makes it look bigger than it actually is. And to be fair, a lot of that consideration is derived from the Jewish way of looking at things as well. Because, I met an Israeli guy in Ecuador, and I had to, metaphorically speaking, forcibly pull out the information from him that he's from Israel. And I'm like, and I'm like, I hope you're not from that commie shithole of Tel Aviv. That was my reply when I finally found out that he's Israeli. And he laughed and was like, oh, so you've been? Of course I've been to Israel. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then he relaxed quite a bit, and I'm like, mate, this is Ecuador. No one gives a shit here.
Yeah. It's like I've mentioned it because when I met my friend Ruth, she was when I met her in Cambodia. She asked where she was from. She was a little bit uncomfortable, and she said, Israel. And then I was like, well, I read a book on Israel and I've been following it. She's like, holy shit, you support Israel. And then we became friends after that. It's pretty... You can tell people are kind of... There's a few articles about it, and I'm also writing one myself. There's a lot of articles that I've started, but I haven't got to... But it's talking about how Israelis abroad are treated. And we link back to Ireland. There was a case recently where there was just an Israeli guy on holiday there, and some Irish far leftists started harassing him, going, Ireland doesn't want you here. You're not welcome here. And I mentioned another one when I met the two Israeli guys in Bangkok. One of them was in Ho Chi Minh City before he managed to get to Bangkok, and in the hostel he was in, one of his what would you say fellow travelers was Irish, and she was very, very cold to him and very, very weird around him, even though they've been on tours together and stuff, when you get in those group tours. And she said something along the lines of, I don't really feel comfortable sharing a space with someone who settles and occupies another person's land. So you can understand why Israelis can be a bit...
Yes, but my solution to that is go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Too much politeness has been exploited by these, you call them subversives, which I should probably bring back that term.
They are subversives.
It's a Cold War era term, but it very much applies. I mean, if the shoe fits. So then there's that. But especially abroad, concern about Israel is actually not in the top 50 priorities in most countries in the world.
So as far as the Saudis don't really care. I mean,
that would include Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I've met a few. They'll say, "Well, I support Palestine because Arab brothers," but they don't really care. It's more.
Yeah, the funny thing is that the
And
closer you get to the elite, the closer the opposite
I've
point of
noticed
view.
as well. Like if I've met, or a few people who served in the Saudi military, and they've got a little bit of money behind them, and they're like, I'm actually more on the Israeli side, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
They're kind of, I can see where they're coming from. It's sort of, they have just been attacked, and and
And
it's not, well, it's not even the worst war the Middle East has seen.
yes,
This century, Iraq, Afghanistan, Afghanistan is not really Middle East, but our thing in Yemen, was far worse,
yep.
proportionally as well.
Yeah, so that's another that's real Orientalism right there, because everyone is looking from the perspective of in the case of Ireland. Well, when was the last time actual warfare occurred on the territory of Ireland? Well, it was a long time ago.
I mean, the Irish military were involved in helping Britain in the Troubles. Apart from that,
it was a long time ago,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the Middle East, well, anyone
constant.
older than 20 probably has seen some warfare in his lifetime, if not on his street, then in a neighboring country nearby, as all the time. And it draws back also this idea that Middle East was a peaceful place before Westerners started meddling in, which is not true. It's been.
What's the old joke? It's America had no enemies before before Israel was created. The Ottoman Empire and the Barbary slave trade would like to have a word with you.
Yeah, especially the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah,
well, it's not around. Yeah, it's not around anymore.
Yeah.
The Ottoman Empire, but yes, and again, prior to any sort of Western meddling in the Middle East, even prior to Islam existing.
There was always shithousery going on.
Yes, because, well, there is such thing as the eternal conflicts that are determined by geography. Whoever runs Asia Minor is in constant with whoever runs Persia.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how Persia is called or how Asia Minor is called. It's going to be a conflict there because that's what geography dictates.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Gotland Island and all sorts of other Crimea.
Yeah.
Another area of eternal conflict. The Neo-Assyrian Empire was basically at conflict throughout the Middle East because of this.
Yeah.
That's 17 centuries before Islam existed.
Yeah. So like.
So these things are
right.
these things are not new. And that's one of the many reasons why I say that we had an overproduction of elites, because we have too many people who think the world starts with them, or the world starts in 1940s or 1840s. Well, in reality, the world starts a long time ago, and some of these things, maybe some Western interventions made them worse, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's discounting parts where the Western intervention actually made things better.
Yeah.
Or it also discounts the many centuries and dozens of centuries prior to any Western intervention where things were still as the way they are now, which is in tension and conflict. It just is what it is. All right, is there anything on your notes that we didn't touch?
We've sort of covered basically everything, most things. Ironic, and a lot more as well. Yeah, we covered basically most of it. I was going to say the whole framing of terrorism as resistance, but that's I think we covered that.
We covered that one out. Okay, what's the one issue in Irish politics and what's the one issue in British politics that the political elite should talk about and it doesn't?
That is a really, really good question. I mean, I am more versed on British politics, to be fair, because I'm more approaching the Irish thing from a cultural perspective, but that does influence.
Okay, what's the number one cultural problem in Ireland that the cultural elite should talk about and it doesn't?
I mean, you could argue immigration to an extent, but that's still that discussion starting to come to the forefront. So that's a really good question. You have actually kind of.
What? It's a very serious question.
I guess you could argue how Ireland's neutrality is going to work going forward, how sustainable it is, and whether they're actually being true to it, with aligning with Iran, and how things are going to pan out in the future.
Yeah, if they align with Iran too much, we could actually treat them in the way we treat Iran.
Yeah.
Hey, can Ireland withstand a blockade?
No, definitely not.
I don't think so, but
Yeah, it's an import economy. because it is an island and it's a lot more expensive than Britain, apparently.
And in Britain, what's the number one issue that the political elite should talk about and they don't?
The influence of China and the influence of, the post-colonial leftists on the culture and
the culpability of the post-colonial left on the influence
and the
of China.
And the influence of China as a whole. But we still don't classify China as a hostile nation.
Why not?
Fuck knows. America does. Everyone else does. We don't. And we had a recent thing with a Chinese spying operation, alleged, apparently, with 2 British guys who are allegedly spying for China and sending information to them. So,
yeah, in the Netherlands, they took over a chip factory from China because of that same reason.
yeah.
And
we nearly gave China the right to build our nuclear power plants. It was under David Cameron, but still. But Jesus fucking Christ, that is a huge national security risk. It is just, giving a state that does consider you hostile and has violated agreements that you've had with them, the Sino-British agreement over Hong Kong. They violate that in 2020 with the security law.
of course.
Yeah. So when you consider that, then, giving them access to your energy.
Yeah, in Norway, just recently, they found out that the national security plan for evacuating population in case of wartime or natural disaster involves using the public transport of every locality. Problem is, a lot of the public transport is electrical buses from China who can be turned off remotely using a SIM card.
So you fucked.
Yeah, so now basically they have to buy new buses for the entire country from somewhere else.
If you ever have a disagreement with China, you can just go,
Yep, pretty much. So to be fair, Chinese influence is an issue pretty much everywhere. But yeah, no, I remember there was an issue
externally more, but internally you've got those post-colonial leftists. So I think we mentioned this last time we met. It's not really a grand conspiracy, but
no, it's not. But it's still an issue.
These people do have their things of educating, and with educating the new generation, you're going to have people who just view their country as this evil place that must be dismantled and
Would it help if we were making the countries less shitty? Because a lot of it is a lot of the reasons why this works is because, well, there is a lot of resentment, and some of it is justified, some of it is not. But it basically panders on pre-existent symptoms, because Chinese and Russian propaganda, Russian in particular, usually works with the customer's material.
Yeah.
They rarely come in and say, look, Russia is awesome or China is awesome. No. They usually look for an existing fissure within the public body politic, and they exploit that one. Now, some of the those holes, those gaps, cannot be plugged in, but some of them
economically mainly?
Not just economically, but yes, well, primarily economically. But, for instance, there was that case where a bunch of British pilots ended up working for China. And it was considered a national security threat. And yes, it was a national security threat. But then the news disappeared pretty fast. And the reason the news disappeared pretty fast is because it turned out the British Air Force was intentionally discriminating against white men.
Yeah.
So, China is willing to give me a job. My own country refuses me because of who I am. I can't blame those guys for going to work for China. Whether they did it for ideological reasons or for economic reasons, it's immaterial at this point. The point being is that if they wanted to avoid being, traitors, their own country prevented that.
So I guess socially you could sort of obviously get rid of DEI stuff. That's the easy one. But also broadly just try and create a united body politic that is very, very proud of being I wouldn't say in a similar way to Russia or China, but in a sense, not this bullshit where we're saying, we're this colonial country, it needs to pay reparations and right the wrongs of the past, quote unquote.
Yeah, the thing is that
you
can't have a united body politic, but you can have a body politic that, at the very least, likes
the country.
Likes the country.
Economically, you'd have to make, obviously we were discussing this earlier.
I'm not even sure that economics plays that much of a big role because, it's kind of
I
like...
think the philosophy is, well, if my country's not going to look after me, why should I?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But no, what I'm saying is that there are some of these very fundamentally false ideas that people believe. Like Ronald Reagan used to say that the problem with liberals is not that they're wrong, is that they know so much that isn't so.
Yeah.
Right? So, for instance... crime is an economic issue. Poverty,
Socioeconomic factors.
Yes, which is just not true.
Yeah.
Because if that were true, then we wouldn't have Dushanbe.
We're seeing that with certain leftists who are arguing some of the crimes done by some of these recent migrants, the sex crimes in particular, are done because of, just because they're lonely or because they're socioeconomic factors or whatever. It's like, no, there is cultural stuff there as well.
Again, one of the safest, and in some years, the safest city at night in the world is Dushanbe, Tajikistan. So, and the purchase power parity income of a citizen of Dushanbe is less than a tenth of Slovakia or Bulgaria.
I was going to say, I sometimes make this comparison between Cambodia and South Africa.
Yes, there you go.
Like South Africa, I think, is richer than Cambodia.
Yes, it is.
But it has one of the highest murder rates.
The poor people in South Africa are richer than the middle class in Cambodia.
Yeah, but Cambodia is a very safe country.
For the most part, yes.
For the most part, yeah. And you don't have some of the retardation that you have in South Africa.
Laos is even poorer than Cambodia and is even safer.
Yeah, it's even safer.
So, if poverty breeds crime, then either those places don't exist, or
it's cultural.
Yeah, of course it's cultural. Of course it's cultural. So that's one thing that liberals know that isn't so.
Yeah.
Another one is this, right? You get so many people swallowing Chinese or Russian propaganda or whatever and start hating their own countries because of socioeconomic factors.
Yeah.
Well, that may be true in some particular, very specific cases. But in general, again, I will say no, right? Uzbekistan, for instance, or Kazakhstan, is under constant hybrid warfare from both Russia and China, 24/7. And for some reason, they don't hate their countries, at all. Quite the opposite. Nowadays, the Russians
Maybe conflict does kind of breed that in a sense,
Yeah, no.
Because Israelis tend to be a lot more united and proud of being Israeli. There are outliers, but...
Yeah, nowadays...
I sometimes joke if we had an October 7th in Britain... you'd have people on the left arguing, how do we provoke them? It was these other factors, whereas with Israel, the country kind of...
I don't think so, because the rallying around the flag phenomenon is undefeated pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Case in point, right, 9/11, where a few months prior, Bush came to power, right, in January 2001. And at that time, you had the same screeching reactions that you had when Trump was inaugurated.
Yeah.
Very similar thing. Oh my goodness, fascism, Christo-fascism has arrived to the United States and all of that jazz, right? And then, 8 months later, it's like, yes, of course, we're rallying around behind the commander-in-chief, let's fuck the Iraqis and whatever, right? So, the rallying around the flag phenomenon is kind of undefeated.
Yeah.
So, if you had an October 7 in Britain, no, at least for a while you won't have that. But then, yes, sure, later on, probably the far left will.
Yeah.
So, this is another thing that liberals know that isn't so. So the economics is not that
I was going to mention with the whole crimes with the migrants, especially the sex crimes, sort of the idea of bouncing around is a combination of so many factors, like the countries they're from tend to ban porn, women are covered up, but also the fact that, I'm not sure how to say this, but non-Muslims are treated like shit. And all those factors, and also the perception of Western women, all play into this factor of...
Yeah, it's a perfect storm,
Yeah.
in their heads anyway.
Yeah, it is a per factor of, she's an infidel, she's kuffar, she's all uncovered, so she's a slag, so why not?
It also doesn't help that you have in your parliament people like Jess Phillips.
Yeah.
When Jess Phillips tried to shut down the inquiry into the grooming gangs, someone started retweeting some of my tweets from 2015 mocking Jess Phillips. I just retweeted one of my old tweets, and I'm like, hey guys, welcome to the party. I've been in the I hate Jess Phillips party for a decade now. The thing is that there are quite a few of these political figures who just seem to hate their own country.
Yeah.
Jess Phillips is a good example in Britain. Some of the D66 politicians in the Netherlands, same thing. We have them here as well. Very few of them, but we have them here as well, who just seem to just hate their own countrymen.
Yeah.
Of course, kicking those people out of politics will not solve the issue entirely, but it would probably help.
Yeah, you'd have to I wouldn't say completely reform the culture, but really start influencing the culture to be more... I mean, we're already seeing with the whole Operation Raise the Flag thing, which was the response. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the response seemed disproportionate to me, especially the response from the state.
Yeah.
I mean, having people disagree with having so many flags around, that's perfectly normal and to be expected in a democracy. But having the police getting involved
Is
on the
insane,
side,
yeah.
on that side is why?
Why, yeah.
And again, I understand why the so-called far-right propaganda works when they say that, look, if the police comes and threatens you or takes down your flag or fines you for having your own national flag, then that means your national flag is forbidden.
Yeah.
And if your national flag is forbidden in
You're
your
occupied.
country, then you are living under occupation.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sorry, but it's a very legitimate form of argument.
Yeah.
It's probably wrong at the end of it,
Yeah.
but the initial feeling is correct.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, yeah, but there are people who say, well, this whole thing is, it makes minorities feel uncomfortable and it's exclusionary and all this other stuff. And
Yeah, and the correct answer to that is yes and.
yeah, it's like I was walking around Cluj earlier and like you see so many Romanian flags earlier, and I'm like, I was thinking to myself, if this was in Britain, we'd be calling this town racist and.
To be fair, this town could be racist, but that's a separate story. But no, on a more serious note, I don't think this is. I mean, in Norway, for instance, there's the flag of Norway everywhere, and Norway's
Israel.
far more Israel, same thing.
Vietnam.
Oh goodness,
Vietnam, Jesus
yes.
Christ, everywhere.
Yeah,
I
Cambodia.
think one of the
same
hostels
thing.
I was staying in Da Nang, the Vietnam flag was just plastered all over. And even had the hammer and sickle as well.
Yeah. Same thing in Laos, same thing in Cambodia.
Cambodia a little bit less so.
A little bit less, yes. Because, and the reason it's a little bit less actually is because there is a law that says you should be putting the portraits of the prime minister and the king.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses started pushing back on that and refusing. And as a result, they don't put the Cambodian flag either.
Yeah.
So that's why there are a little bit less than that. The flag is actually not mandatory, but the pictures are.
Yeah.
And in pushing back against that, they're also not flying the flag as often. Although, if you go into the villages, it's actually very common, especially the border villages. And that, again, makes sense. The periphery is usually more nationalistic than the center. So, yeah, all of these small things that, at least from my perspective, maybe I'm wrong and you can correct me, but at least from my perspective, they seem pretty easy to fix.
To an extent, but I think there is deeper issues as well.
Yeah, but to
Don't
get
have-
to those deeper issues,
Just deal with the surface stuff,
I'm thinking like a programmer here. Let's start with the easy problems
Yeah.
and then work from there. Because, ordering the police to stand down when they see the national flag, that sounds pretty easy
That's
to
pretty
me.
easy, yeah.
Yeah. Ordering the police to stop policing non-crime hate incidents.
Yeah, non-crime hate incidents. Yeah, that's an
That's
easy one.
pretty easy. Recently, they actually stopped doing
And then
that.
start repelling the Gross Communications Act and the
Yeah.
what's the other one? Because there's an earlier one.
Online Safety Act.
That's the different one. But
Yeah,
the
no,
Gross,
that
Gross
one-
Communications Act is
No, I think the Online Safety Act in its entirety is a terrible idea.
yeah, it's horrible. It needs to go.
It needs to go yesterday.
It needs to go last week.
Yeah, pretty much. Same thing, you have a border guard. How about just start acting like a coast guard? How about it starts acting like a coast guard?
Start saying, yeah, you're not coming in. Sorry.
Yeah.
Back to France or back to Sudan or whatever.
Or blow up if they refuse.
Yeah, that would be saying that in Britain would be absolutely haram.
Well, it was absolutely haram when Salvini did it in Italy.
Yeah.
He suffered a few political consequences from it, got persecuted and whatnot. But a few years later, he's now part of the ruling coalition, and now they're blowing things up as a routine. So as it turns out, the best way out of this quagmire is through.
Yeah,
No, I'm serious.
there's a streamer called Asmongold. I think he's the most popular political streamer thing, and he said something along the lines of, Britain is dangerously close from going from stop the boats to sink the boats. And I think we are getting to that point very...
And it's not even a very foreign concept. I mean, that's how Australia stopped the boats.
Yeah.
They sunk a few of them, and suddenly the boats stopped coming.
Yeah, but then people will argue, well, it violates international law, and then that goes, and then the effects of that, and...
Okay, then call the police to enforce the international law.
And there is... I mean, Britain's not exactly getting isolated, is it?
That's what I'm saying.
No one's really going to cut ties with Britain over this.
Over this?
No. Our
Who's gonna
political
care?
standing's not really going to... I think ironically in certain places would have an increase in our...
No, you'd improve your relationship with Argentina for sure, because Javier Milei respects strength. So I'm just saying. But more seriously, I mean, who's gonna sanction Britain? Because this is a normal policy for pretty much any country.
You can argue it's a moral failing. Not really moral, but the whole,
I mean, even from a libertarian perspective, if we're going to tolerate a state existing, then one of the few things that we want that state to do is national security.
Yes.
Stopping an invading army
or stopping
seems like a pretty...
or potential security risk.
Yeah,
which
seems
unfortunately
like...
these people on the boats, they do, as we've seen, very recently.
So, from the far-right libertarian perspective, all the way to the Marxist-Leninist perspective, stopping illegal immigration seems like a self-evident thing.
There's also the whole I think I mentioned before, the whole self-hatred, the whole we have to right the wrongs of the past. We ruin their countries, therefore we should pay for that. There is that idea.
Even if you believe that, okay, fine, we'll pay for that in their countries.
Yeah.
Not here.
Yeah.
Even if you believe that, I don't, but even if you believe that...
Because I don't either. I mean, it's like, yeah.
What's the... Because, Germany has a lot of this self-doubt, but they didn't open the borders to Namibia.
Yeah.
They paid reparations to Namibia, they built some stuff over there, but,
the same
over
with Israel.
there...
Yeah, in Israel,
Yeah, over there. You're not all moving back here.
No.
Right?
Yeah, fuck, yeah.
And, to an
But
extent...
they'll also claim, claiming asylum as an internationally recognized right, or this whole thing.
Yeah, but then again, what happens if the wealthiest countries that fund the UN
say no?
Say no.
Yeah.
What exactly is going to happen?
Yeah.
If I had the time as a politician, I would actually go in the full trolling mode as well. Qatar is a very wealthy nation. How about we send 1 million immigrants there to claim asylum? Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And when they complain, we just call them racist.
Yeah.
And put them under sanctions.
Yeah.
Let's see how that works.
Yeah.
Do this once or twice. Pakistan deported 1 million Afghanis in a week. In a trail of tears type of thingy. So this idea that, you can't have mass deportation because the logistics, it will be complicated. I'm sorry, if Pakistan can do it.
I mean, the problem is it's a land border, isn't it?
Yes, it is a land border.
Whereas ours are overseas, so how would you force Sudan to accept a flight from... And also they'll say, well, they're in danger of their lives. It's like...
Are they?
Sudan, maybe. Afghanistan, no.
Afghanistan, no.
The Taliban do not give a fuck about the former, collaborators.
Yeah, that's one aspect. And second aspect, even if you follow the letter of the so-called international law, most of the asylum requests do not fit the standard.
What is it? It was silly if you'll have Pakistanis saying I'm actually gay, and
Yeah, no.
How do you prove that? Do you just go right, suck his cock?
Well, yeah, no. First of all, I would remove that entirely. I don't think being a homosexual should be grounds for asylum. Period. I don't care. So there's that. Especially considering that it's so easy to abuse.
Yeah, it is. You can just go, oh, I'm gay, let me in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not only it's easy to abuse, but also I don't think it imposes a very narrow, dare I say, minority, ironically, except Ireland, dare I say, minority extremist standard. Because we have to remember, gay rights did not pass a referendum anywhere except Ireland.
Yeah.
There's not a single place on earth.
It was mainly by consensus in some places.
No, it was mostly by judicial activism.
Yeah.
Like in Taiwan, there were 2 gay marriage referenda. Both of them failed by significant majorities. And then it got imposed via the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
In the US, in California, gay marriage failed a ballot initiative twice. And even today, the state of California has actually not ratified Obergefell. Expecting that Obergefell will eventually be overturned, which it will because it was wrongly decided, just like Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
Right? In the Netherlands, same thing. It was never on the ballot. In Sweden, same thing. It was never on the ballot. Yeah. It never really passed the democratic test, except Ireland. Again, Ireland had a vote on this, and the Irish people voted in favor. Fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's another thing as well. You mentioned the societal thing. Is the fear of being called racist. That is a very deep thing. Being not racist is probably the most important thing. The most important thing, and most, you have to be, and there's a whole thing, it's not just enough to be not racist, you must be anti-racist, you must be,
right.
This whole,
This is why I'm a big fan of a Pinochetian minarchism type of regime, right? It's not enough to not be a communist. You have to fly the helicopters.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to be.
Well, if you even have slightly edgy opinions, that's a lot of social capital. You lose a lot of social capital, for lack of a better term, or you become ostracized, or You can actually, saying the wrong thing can put your life in danger,
Yeah, but by the same token, as we've seen from the experience in the US and most of Eastern Europe, and now increasingly portions of Western Europe as well,
Britain.
Italy would be a good example.
And chunks of Britain, but not quite yet. We're still a
No,
bit
you guys are
behind.
still behind that curve, but you'll probably get there as well. Sometimes edgy opinions can actually gain social capital,
Yeah.
right? The Republican Party of today is an entirely different party than it was in 2012.
Yeah.
It's like literally you have people who ran the campaign of Mitt Romney. In 2024, they campaigned with the Democrats, right? Dick Cheney, the
I've
Cheney
seen that
family,
quite a
Liz
few.
Cheney, and the Cheney family, right? So that GOP died entirely and now formed an entirely different coalition, and mostly of edgy people.
Yeah.
Anyone under the age of 50 in the GOP is a very edgy troll,
Yeah.
including the vice president himself, right? The thing is that at some point there is some strength in numbers. Enough edgy people can actually have their own coalition.
My fear is with the younger generation, it is going to be a bit tricky.
Because even though I say there are people who are more right wing in that sphere, you do have still majority leftists.
Really?
Yeah, and I remember hearing a conversation in one of my seminars before the professor came in, and they were spouting the left wing opinion, saying, well, immigration isn't the big issue. White people commit more crime than migrants. And
Which is a lie.
yeah, but also even
Especially in violent crime, I don't think that is
and
true.
per capita as well. They're not mentioning per capita.
Well, per capita has been the enemy of the left for a century now.
You're actually more at risk from a white man than an Afghan migrant. It's like, because there's how many white men?
30-something million.
30 million, yeah. How many Afghans are there? There's probably
100,000.
100,000 or so.
Maybe
yeah.
even less, yeah.
How many Sudanese, Somalis, such and such, Or mentioning how white people have grooming gangs too. It's like,
Do they?
I think there was one or two. The Pakistani Muslim ones were just,
More consistent, more numerous.
more consistent, more numerous, and obviously the motivations were racial and religious. They would call the girls white slags, kuffar. They would use the Quran and Hadith to justify why they're doing it.
The thing is that oftentimes, and I'm going to get into trouble for saying this.
I'm going to be in trouble when this drops. I'm going to be in so much trouble when this...
But nevertheless, oftentimes on these kinds of cases, I actually blame the authority more than the criminal. That is to say, yes, of course, the criminal should be
Yeah.
thrown off of a helicopter, off of a
They
staggering
covered it up.
height.
They covered it up.
Yes.
They literally covered it up. Because
Yes.
they didn't want to be called racist.
Yes.
Well, that was part of it. But it was also community cohesion, which, sounds ironically Singaporean. But, I think it was because there was a lot of race riots. I think during the time of the grooming gangs, it was the Bradford riots. And if that had... I honestly think if the grooming gangs thing had, came out earlier, holy fuck, that would have been almost civil war. But I think we...
The thing is that one of them, besides being older and having seen this movie multiple times, one of the reasons why I'm skeptical of such arguments is because I've seen it played out in Sweden. In Sweden, at some point, the city of Malmö had been plagued with Salafi mosques, mostly Qatari funded. And
It's always Qatar.
the left there, particularly the Social Democrats and the far left, were, the far left was in alignment with the Islamists, and the center left, the mainstream left, the Socialdemokraterna, were just genuinely scared of what would happen if they were to start cleaning the place up.
Yeah.
And most of the people talking about it in a critical manner were the far right. And the far right came up with the very sensible policy of what if we just send the SWAT in and deport the imams, shut down the funding, take down the mosque and see what happens.
Yeah.
And guess what? The Muslims started voting for the far right. It turns out that they were afraid of the Islamists as well. And, every time they would talk about it, they would be called all sorts of names or simply ignored.
Yeah.
So, they're like, okay, fine, then we're going to vote for the white supremacists
Yeah.
if they promise to take down the mosques. And they won the election, they took down the mosques, and now they got more votes from the Muslim areas. So, as it turns out, oftentimes it's really relatively easy to fix.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes not as uniform as it seems. Because, the job of an activist is to make sure to project that more people agree with him than they really do.
Yeah.
And the far left has tried, sometimes succeeded, sometimes not, but they always try to project that entire groups of people agree with them, when in reality,
No.
That's not really
Not
the case.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of people actually behind the scenes will say, yeah, most people agree with the far right position on things. The majority of people, like if you talk to people privately, they'll say, yeah, I like Farage or I like this. You know,
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Nigel Farage
am I,
either,
you know,
but
for many reasons.
he's probably going to be prime minister.
Yeah, he's going to
is
be
it?
prime minister.
Yeah.
At this point, yeah, Reform's going to win. I mean, the Green Party probably give me second, but they're just Zach Polanski's just so cringe.
The Green Party has the disadvantage that right now
It's just student politics.
no, every single country is having its reckoning moment with green
Yeah.
politics. Eventually, it will come to Britain as well. When is the next election? 3 years from now, 2 years and a half from now, something like
Probably
28?
28, yeah.
that. Yeah, so 3 years from
Actually,
now.
no, 2029, because it's every 5 years, you know.
No, it's every 5 years.
Yeah, we
Oh.
had 2005.
Well, by 2029, this arrives in Britain as well. Everyone will have their reckoning moment with green politics. So the Green Party there, they better
they're
run.
they're running on a ironically pro-Palestinian, pro-immigration platform. I'll have to send you that video of Zach Polanski walking around Birmingham, and it's this really cringe video where he's like, you know, if you take a little spice of Somalia and a dashing of Puerto Rico, and you get this vibrant, amazing society. And it's just, you know, if I was a far leftist, I would just think, yeah, fuck it, I'm voting for Farage. It is that cringe. I actually told this to someone. They're just like, yeah, we saw someone who was actually pretty left wing. We saw the video, and he's just like, I'm voting for Farage next election, mate. It is that cringe. He's just, and there was a famous thing where he says, oh, Farage is a fascist. He gets brought up saying, how is Farage a fascist? He can't answer the question. He literally cannot answer. He says, well, the themes of Brexit. It's like, well, how is he a fascist now? I mean, this is the definition of fascism. Well, it was just, you know.
Well, if you read the fascist manifesto, is basically social democrats. I'm just saying. Like, you know, universal voting rights, that's a fascist policy. Minimum wage, that's definitely a fascist policy. Having more consensus between the great companies and the government, that's fascism.
Yeah.
Almost every social democrat party in Europe is actually fascist.
At least economically, you know. Because the left will define fascism as, you know, on authoritarian social issues more than economics.
No, the OG fascism had very few social opinions.
Yeah.
They had a lot of economic opinions.
Because the whole thing is like nationalism, and the whole thing with how fascism's understood is the whole obsession with nationalism, othering, the military-industrial complex, etc., etc. That's how they define.
Heck, the original fascists weren't even particularly concerned with the military. Because that's the thing, and this is a spell that needs to be broken, right? Nationalism is not specifically a fascist or a communist or a right-wing or a left-wing position. Nationalism is orthogonal to all of these.
And it's just a sort of...
Same thing with militarism, believing in a stronger military.
I know we've been talking about Israel for the whole fuck... But Ben Gurion was a nationalist.
Oh, of course.
But he was very left-wing. Golda Meir was a nationalist. Very, very left-wing on not just economics, but social
She
issues.
was part of the labor movement.
Yeah, and she was quite feminist.
Yes, and except maybe on unions, she was to the left of Ben Gurion on most economic issues.
Yeah.
On unions, she correctly recognized the unions as a subversive project.
Yeah,
and of course, she was right about that.
Yitzhak Rabin, I mean, he was quite left initially, then he moved. I mean, today's actually, we're recording this, is the 30-year assassination, 30-year anniversary of his assassination.
Yes.
Yitzhak Rabin. F in the chat for the big man. Yeah,
Yitzhak Rabin was compelled by reality to move
he
to the
became
right.
more right. Yeah,
Yes.
it was after the economy of Israel kind of tanked in the 80s, and then Begin and Shamir kind of moved it.
Yeah,
to a free market.
that's why it's called the new Israeli shekel.
Yes.
To reset the currency.
Yeah.
Maybe reality will force you to renounce some of your social democratic leanings on economic. You will eventually learn to love the chainsaw and Javier Milei, especially as the...
I mean, I do have some. I mean, there are some things that need to get cut.
Yeah, well, your pension system will
pension
collapse.
system's fucked. That's a thing for another.
So then there's that. All right, I think we've pissed off enough people, because that was the main purpose of this video. Start with pissing off the Irish. Start with pissing off the Irish, and then slowly piss off as many people as possible. Well, we could do more.
I'm getting cancelled.
We could do more, but we need to eat something, and we need to still enjoy this city, because then he's fucking off to another country.
Fuck off.
Thank you for coming. Thank you all for
having
for taking the time to watch this weird thing.
Yeah,
see you all soon. Cheers.
See you soon, boys.